This guy has a huge problem. Every time he falls asleep, he immediately wakes up in nightmarish world full of monsters. It's pretty much impossible to survive there, and whenever he dies, he returns to Earth. Kim Woojin has been trapped in this exhausting cycle for 12 years. He's gotten used to the pain of dying, but it's impossible to get used to being constantly exhausted for 12 straight years. He tries to get medical help, but no specialist can figure out what's wrong with him. To stop dying in that hellish nightmare, he's forced to study and master weaponry, martial arts, jungle survival, military tactics, and every other discipline that might help him stay alive a little longer. Thanks to all that effort, he starts dying less often. But the fundamental problem of sleep deprivation never goes away. All he wants is to lie down in his bed and get some goddamn sleep, even if only once. Then one day, blood suddenly starts pouring from his nose. Before he can do anything, everything around him becomes blurry, and he dies right there in a pool of blood. When he opens his eyes again, he feels like he's finally had a proper night's sleep, but the sight around him is far too familiar to be happy about it. He's back in the same nightmare world. Only this time, there's no second chance. It's a terrifying realization, especially with a giant lizard monster lurking nearby. But thanks to his vast experience, our guy knows exactly how to survive here. In fact, he's become the top predator. He leaps out of his hiding spot and slices the monster in half with a single clean strike. Then he begins searching through the corpse for its core. It looks disgusting, but he swallows it whole. Because of a unique ability he discovered, every time he eats a monster core, he gains a portion of that monster's powers. As planned, the safest first move was to head to a brighter place untouched by monsters. Woo Jin headed for the safe haven, while Aura farming on trees along the way. A night had passed, and he was savoring a welcome change in his life. Finally, he can get a night of perfect sleep whenever he wants. It had been a month since he permanently crossed over to a much harsher reality. The adjustment period was short. He was already proficient when it came to survival. Throughout the month, he continued heading towards the light. Just because he feels more liberated to fight now doesn't mean he regularly seeks out a hunt. Risking his life for fun in this place would be pure madness. Still, there are days when he can't fight the itch to get into a fight. Coincidentally, that itch crops up whenever hunger strikes. Today's breakfast was a giant bat. A sneak attack was all it took to take the poor monster down. As per his routine, he carved up the dead monster's body and fished for the monster core. This essence, present in every monster's body, gives the hunter the chance to gain new power upon consumption. Ever since he made these things his snack of choice, adapting to the harsh surroundings had become a lot easier. He also discovered another relevant fact during the first month. According to the badge he found in his pocket, the body he took over belonged to someone with the status of a third-class mercenary. Surprisingly, he could read the system of writing in this world. The existence of mercenaries and the identification token suggests that people are living and thriving somewhere in this violent world. Finally, he could see the light at the end of his month-long journey. On the outskirts of the monster-free zone, he was taken aback by the sight of a clearly man-made trap laid on the floor. That can only mean one thing. There might be people nearby. Elated, he ran faster towards his destination. A few minutes later, he reached a clearing and found a humble wooden house. Excited to interact with another human after a month of solitude, he knocked on the door and found that it was unlocked. He cautiously entered and called out to see if anyone was home. On top of a dining table, he found a leather-bound book. The title reads Demonic Realm Chronicles. Skimming through its contents, he was taken aback. This book detailed the history and practical knowledge of the realm, an encyclopedia of sorts. Everything was recorded quite meticulously too. For the sake of his survival, this thing would be a must-read. While he was engrossed in its contents, he didn't notice the man of the house entering with a crossbow locked, loaded, and aimed at his head. The old man was wary of the stranger standing in the middle of his dining room. One foul move and he wouldn't hesitate to put a hole in Woo Jin's head. While Woo Jin was glad to see another human being after so long, Woo Jin recognized that he must look like a home invader or robber. He raised his hand to signal that he didn't mean any harm. He just found a house in a remote area and came in out of curiosity. The old man did not give a damn about his reason. He was shooed away like an unwanted animal. Woo Jin did not escalate the tension, but before going his own way, he wanted to ask the old man something. Would it be possible to borrow the book? He really wanted to give it a read. If needed, he would be willing to pay a price. The old man asked what he would do if he were refused access to the book. Woo Jin truthfully answered that in that case he won't hesitate to take it by force. He reached for his blade, alarming the old man as he gripped his crossbow tighter. They sized each other up for what felt like forever. Woo Jin had no real estimate of the old man's danger level, but he could feel that he would never lose. Ultimately, the old man lowered his weapon, and cooler heads prevailed. He believed that a petty thief wouldn't necessarily bargain for a book. He introduced himself as Hector. Kim Woo Jin also gave a proper introduction, but his name was quite peculiar and hard to pronounce around these parts, so he went by Jin instead. Hector understood that the young man wanted to get some reading done, but the book was precious to him too. He cannot lend it out to a stranger. If he really wanted to study the material, he'd better stay for a while. In return for free lodging and reading time, he could help with some simple chores around the house. It was a great deal, one that Jin had no problem accepting. And so, he ended up staying at Old Man Hector's house. He was a gruff man, but he was not a bad person by any means. He was even kind enough to feed Jin home-cooked meals. That night was the first time he'd had warm soup in a long time. It was so delicious that the first bite brought him to tears. He briefly considered that Hector might be an angel in disguise. The old man routinely went out to hunt by sunrise. One time, the old man spilled that he was scouring the woods to take revenge on the monster that killed his comrades. Hector looked like a weathered warrior, strong and stoic. Seeing him so nervous whenever he went out to hunt was worrying. Whatever it was he was looking for must be a considerably powerful beast. When the old man leaves, Jin reads through the chronicles, absorbing as much information from the pages as he can. The history of this accursed realm began with the Northern Empire. It was a tale as old as time. The king of the north was blinded by greed and laid his hands on the otherworldly gate. Legends say that on the other side of the gate, the truth of all creation and immense power can be found. On that day, when the greedy emperor tried to force his way into the promise of unlimited power, the calamity was triggered. All sorts of powerful monsters emerged from the otherworldly gate. With their power and sheer numbers, turning the entire northern region into a demonic realm only took 9 years. In an effort to push back, humanity united many fragmented factions to form the Order Alliance. They built a barrier to stop the expansion of the demonic realm. That's enough lore drop for the day. As Jin expected, there was a lot of useful information crammed into the book. According to written reports, the deeper you go into the demonic realm, the stronger the monsters are. Jin's own experience backed this up. The monsters he encountered got significantly weaker as he headed towards the light. While he was digesting some new and interesting information, Hector came running back to the house. Jin was pondering how deep he was inside the demonic realm he had been wandering, while Hector was sprinting for his life. How strong was Jin exactly? A chance to find out might have just presented itself. A pack of werewolves had turned the old man from the hunter to the hunted. Leading the pack was a ferocious bipedal beast, hairy and wild. Surrounding the alpha were countless hungry wolves. A few meters away from the door, Hector stopped and turned around to fire some crossbow bolts. It wasn't enough to deter his furry pursuers. The alpha easily destroyed the bolts with its sharp claws. As the werewolf closed the gap, Hector could feel his imminent death getting nearer by the second. Fortunately, Jin had noticed the commotion and walked out of the house to check it out. He brandished his blade while looking at the beast chasing after the old man who fed and housed him. Ever the kind-hearted man, Hector pleaded for Jin to run away. He did run, but not in the direction Hector was pointing. Without a ripple of emotion, he was locked in on the ferocious beast up ahead. Jin gathered momentum and jumped up, covering a massive distance in the blink of an eye. The alpha tried to claw him out of the air, thinking of him as a nuisance. Jin corrected that dismissive attitude by slashing the alpha's whole arm wide open, exposing flesh and bone. He did not stop there. The blade cut deeper and deeper until the alpha werewolf was sliced cleanly in half. The rest of the pack couldn't even respond to something so absurd. In their eyes, their boss was supposed to be the strongest there was. Similarly, Old Man Hector watched the young man with awe and fear. Taking down a werewolf in a single slash was not normal at all. Jin broke the silence by audaciously asking if the alpha was considered a strong monster. Hector found it bizarre that the boy he took in was asking such a ridiculous question. Everyone in the area knows that werewolves are strong, incredibly so. Jin would love to know more about these monsters after he deals with the rest of the pack. The wolves looked at him with rage. He just killed their alpha after all. Jin estimated that he probably faced stronger monsters. But given that about 40 dogs were surrounding the house, he might be screwed if he gets careless. Instead of fighting all these mutts, slicing the throat of the second in command sounded like the most efficient way to shatter their crumbling morale. It was easy to identify the second strongest dog, aside from the dead alpha. The brown-haired werewolf standing at the very front with an exceptionally large build was a promising target. When Jin raised his blade, an air of death emanated from his stance. The werewolf felt the menacing force coming off him and hesitated to make a move. It tried to size him up and looked into his eyes, but eventually averted its gaze like a scared puppy. The second in command started moving, but he wasn't loading up an attack. He was moving to get the fuck out of there, running for his life and leaving the rest of the pack to fend for themselves. Second in command pathetically yelped, presumably telling the other dogs to scatter and run. The pack looked embarrassed by their supposed leader's shameless actions. Even so, they knew they were no match against the human who diced up the alpha. Hector was more surprised that the wolves, known for their pride and bravery, would retreat with their tails tucked between their legs. In his mind, Jin was actually impressed that the second in command assessed the situation and made the right call. After getting rid of the ferocious threat, Hector and Jin returned inside. They carved up the alpha's corpse, cleanly harvesting its ridiculously expensive pelt. There was actually a bounty on the head of this alpha werewolf, 40 gold coins to be exact. Having no frame of reference with regard to the economy, Jin asked the old man if 40 gold coins were a lot of money. Indeed it was. 40 should be enough to live comfortably without working for about 6-7 years. If a trash monster like a werewolf could net him such a huge bounty, doesn't that mean he could just find and kill more monsters whenever he's short on cash? That way, he could keep raking in the bag and live a comfortable life. Perhaps all the suffering over the last 12 years has led him to an easier one. Aside from the intact werewolf pelt, Hector gave Jin some jerky, a pouch of silver coins, and a pioneer map. He tasked the young man with taking the loot to Pioneer Village and selling it to a man named Jacob. He already marked the Pioneer Village on the map. He was certain that Jacob would buy the werewolf hide for a fair price. After receiving the old man's kindness over the past few days, he hesitated to accept something so valuable. Hector insisted that he was simply paying the fair price of revenge. He already told the kid that he had a grudge against this beast. He thanked his mysterious guest for finally fulfilling what he couldn't over the years. He just hopes that they meet again if the opportunity arises. Jin shook the old man's hand and also expressed his gratitude. The very next day, the pelt was bundled up, and he was ready to go. He had gotten used to living slowly with Hector, but now, it's time to return to the wilderness. On his way to the destination marked on the map, he was being surveilled by a familiar figure. The cowardly werewolf was keeping a worryingly close eye on his departure. The beast looked like it was up to no good. Pioneer Village wasn't too far. A whole day of walking, and he had reached the first walled settlement he'd ever seen in the middle of the demonic realm. He entered the village without a fuss after showing his mercenary identity token. It was quite well stocked for a small town. The residents weren't particularly welcoming to newcomers, though. The dirty looks he was getting were not pleasant in the slightest. He chalked it up to being a stranger in a strange land. Everyone's on high alert. It was understandable, truly. In a world like this, people can be more dangerous than monsters. To get some much-needed information, Jin went straight to the pub. In there, he blended in with the rowdy crowd without a problem. Jin sat in the bar, and the bartender offered him some beer. He didn't come here for the drink. More importantly, he wanted information regarding a man named Jacob. Upon hearing that name, the man sitting next to him reacted curiously. While slicing and snacking on an apple, the man claimed to be Jacob. Jin's first impression was that the guy had the face of a scammer. Despite his reservations, Jin stated that he was sent by Hector to sell a werewolf hide. Upon hearing that, Jacob stood up from his seat and dropped his knife and apple. The man assumed that Hector killed the werewolf himself. Jin did not correct his assumption. After inspecting the wares, Jacob confirmed that the werewolf hide was real. By this time, the entire pub's attention was lasered in on the wolf hide displayed on the bar counter. Jacob's shock quickly twisted into malevolent glee. Without saying a word, the rowdy crowd of the pub encircled Jin with weapons in hand. It looks like Hector was deceived by this Jacob guy. The scammer played with the werewolf pelt and told the boy to get lost and leave the loot. Jin sighed. He should have trusted his scam radar. Faces don't lie after all. Still, he tried to discuss business in a civil manner. Jacob was annoyed that the kid wasn't getting the hint. In truth, old man Hector was an investment. Keeping that old fart alive in the middle of the woods and selling him supplies caused a loss. Conveniently, the hide should cover all the accumulated losses over time. Jin briefly considered just killing the bastard right then and there, but he stayed strong. He doesn't want to kill a human being over a mere hide. He was truly planning to walk away and let the matter go, like the nice guy he is. That was until Jacob pushed his buttons and spilled beer all over him. The scammer had finally done it. It is fucking on. Jin stood up, letting the bar stool fall. He walked past the goons, who threatened him with menacing looks, and headed for the door. Jacob was very pleased with himself. He intimidated the kid to surrender such valuable material, right? Wrong. Jin was just walking towards the door to get something heavy to seal it with. He turned to Jacob and gave the scumbag a lesson. If he intended to scam someone from the start, it would have been better to go for the neck instead of the back. The scammer scoffed, not realizing what was about to happen. Since the kid doesn't value his own life, Jacob ordered his goons to attack. Jin let them get closer to him. It would be easier and faster that way. People like these won't even give him a guilty conscience once he's done taking their heads. Jin parried the closest goon who tried to stab him with sloppy technique. The parry was so strong that it got the man's whole arm vibrating along with his blade. While stunned, cutting his stomach and letting the entrails pour out was as easy as pie. The next few goons who tried to get to him started falling like flies. A big guy with an axe tried to cut him down with impressive force but horrible timing and skill. In response, he turned a nearby table over to bury the big guy in furniture and soup. While trying to push the heavy wooden table away, the big guy lost all strength when Jin cut his fucking head off. Jin was cold-bloodedly adding to his kill streak like he was taking a casual stroll in the park. Jacob looked at the boy he tried to rob and murder and realized that he wasn't built for this shit. A fighter this strong in this small area, there was no way Jacob wouldn't know about someone like that. At this rate, his goons will fall and he'll die for nothing. The fastest goon in the pub tried to sneak a dual-blade attack from Jin's flank, but both arms were cut off before they could make contact. The bald brawler was next. Jin rolled the guy with a shoulder bump and literally dug his fingers through the poor man's chest. To finish the job with a fatality, he separated the brute's upper and lower body with a clean slice. It took him less than a minute to clear the pub of an entire gang. Jacob tried to cause a commotion, yelling at his remaining men to run so he could escape amidst the chaos. With the door blocked, Jacob and the remaining goons threw themselves through the glass windows just to get out. They might have gotten away if it weren't for another surprise. Outside the pub, a snarling red wolf was waiting. It didn't make sense. Why would a monster this vicious roam inside the village? The shock from the wolf's surprise appearance brought Jin enough time to catch up. A murderous scam victim on one side and a voracious beast on the other. There was nowhere to go. Jin casually looked at the giant dog and remembered the clever coward from the day before. The wolf's eyes lingered on him for quite some time. Jin coldly asked if the dog came here to die alongside the shameless scammers. Just like yesterday, the beast curled up in fear under Jin's gaze. To show that he did not come here with hostile intentions, the wolf whimpered and dropped to the ground, showing Jin its belly. It panted and wagged its tail like a well-trained house dog in front of him. The dog rolled around the grass like an energetic good boy. Jacob and the goons were equally confused and frightened by the bizarre turn of events. Woojin was quite annoyed by such mutt-like behavior. He didn't have time for this, but since the guy was seemingly trying to get his attention to get adopted, he threw the dog a little test. Jin pointed at Jacob and the goons and ordered the wolf to bite. Immediately, the sweet and energetic doggo was gone. In its place was the fearsome beast that ruled the nearby woods. The wolf maimed the goons without mercy, biting their faces off and inflicting as much pain as possible. Jin preferred seeing the mutt behave like an apex predator compared to the cutesy act. Jacob recoiled in cowardly terror as his goons were turned into mincemeat. The wolf bit into their flesh and nastily painted the ground with blood. The scammer's brain tried to come up with a plan to get out of this messed up situation. He reckoned that Jin was just a strong moron. Thinking that he could get away scot-free if he apologized a few times, he got down to his knees in surrender. He pleaded for mercy and promised to do anything to be forgiven. Of course, he was just doing this to get out and plot his revenge afterward. Jin wasn't stupid. He parked his blade right next to the scammer's head, scalping that son of a bitch just a little. Jacob didn't dare move a single inch. He was completely wrong about this kid. If there was one thing Jin hated, it was being taken for a pushover. Well, he was. He used to be that way. Back on Earth, his boss would put on an acting masterclass in apologizing for a delay in his salary. That pig would cite that the factory wasn't doing so well. Back then, Kim Woo-jin was a soft-hearted pushover who didn't want to rock the boat. So, he accepted. Showing that kind of weakness was a mistake. Once his boss knew he had no backbone, the salary that had been a week late was delayed by another month, multiple months, and eventually, he was slaving away for free. He was so pathetic that the manager had stopped putting on an act, snapping at him whenever he asked to get paid. As always, that fucker would claim that they should be sticking together when times are tough financially, even though his golf clubs were brand new. In the end, Woo-jin was branded selfish, and the treatment got worse. He never wanted to live that way ever again. Jin turned his back on the scammer as he mulled over the valuable lesson he had learned back then. As expected, Jacob immediately pounced on the opportunity to do some fuckery. He drew a short blade hidden in his waist and attacked. The bait was successful. Jin swiftly turned back around to welcome the sneak attack with perfect clarity. He grabbed Jacob's wrist and kept him upright within striking distance. People like Jakin do not know the meaning of the word remorse. The world would be a better place with one less person like that. Jin brandished his blade and decapitated the scammer's head. It was bloodier than a Tarantino movie. In this life, Kim Woo-jin vowed never to be taken advantage of again. With the entire gang of irrelevant goons wiped out, he turned to the mutt that helped him. What should he even do with this guy? Judging by the mutt's subservience, he seemed pretty determined to follow Jin. He even surrendered the stolen bag of coins looted from Jacob's corpse. The mutt was pretty clear in his desire to tag along. He was acting awfully close to the man who killed the alpha of his pack. The big guy seemed clever enough. They should get along from now on. After the massacre, Jin retreated to an inn that had a room big enough to accommodate his new furry friend. Once again, he had a restful and perfect deep sleep. Nights like those will never go unappreciated. The morning felt so refreshing. He felt like he could fly. After stretching his severely scarred body, he went out to a nearby stream to wash his bloody clothes. While trying his best to scrub away the stains of yesterday's scuffle, he contemplated. He just killed a person for the first time. He killed a whole gang, in fact. Much to his surprise and concern, he felt no hint of guilt in his conscience. Maybe it was because the people he killed were scum, but that wasn't the real reason. Instead of guilt, the emotion he felt at that time was the same as when he was out hunting monsters. It was an intense thrill, indescribable by mere words. There is a change occurring something inside him. Perhaps he was cursed. Nevertheless, the most important thing was survival. One thing is certain, his life in this nightmare world will be vastly different from the unfulfilled life he once led. He won't suffer absurdity, and he will live in abundance. That will be his mantra from now on. Alongside the mutt, he trekked towards the next human settlement nearby, 5th Pioneer City. He still needed a buyer for his werewolf pelt. For now, He instructed the mutt to stay nearby while keeping out of sight. He would attract too much attention inside the fifth. According to the chronicles he read, he would have to visit the nearest Order Alliance to receive a monster bounty. The fifth should have a branch of the Order Alliance. It did not take him long to find the place. When he walked into the pristine building in the middle of the city, he saw a bored employee manning the front desk. Upon confirming that he was in the right place, he dropped the werewolf pelt on the table. He just came by to collect some bounty. The employee was unenthusiastic, thinking he was being pranked with some dog skin. Upon seeing the whole head of a dead werewolf, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This time, Jin did not deny killing the werewolf himself. He was escorted into a separate room and was politely asked to wait. A few minutes later, a different Alliance employee came in. Given the amount involved for the bounty's payout, they had to make sure that the pelt was the real deal. The experts confirmed its authenticity and authorized the release of the bountiful reward. This amount of gold coins in one sack should allow him to live a comfortably lazy life for 6-7 years. It didn't feel real until he saw the glimmering coins in person. His hands trembled. It was a different thrill compared to hunting. But money is definitely a good thing, no matter what world you live in. While he was imagining a bountiful next couple of days, the man who released the reward asked him if he would be interested in taking on another request. That sounded like an opportunity to make even more cash. Apparently, a monster recently settled down at a nearby quarry, and it is causing quite a headache. Because of the monster, the workers cannot continue working in the quarry. Without the bloodstone mining operation, money had stopped circulating in the city, putting it on the brink of financial ruin. Their intel suggests that the monster terrorizing the local economy was stronger than a werewolf. Jin might just be the man for the job. As it turns out, the quarry had been taken over by the monster known as Mad Skull. This oversized warthog has a bounty of 70 gold coins. Jin had read about this creature in the chronicles. Moreover, he had already faced one. As the name suggests, the Mad Skull has a nearly unbreakable skull. But its most troublesome trait was its relentless aggression. A werewolf can't even compare when it comes to raw toughness and strength. In truth, it took Wu Jin a month to kill one of these things for the first time. He died 28 times in 28 separate nightmares before he figured out how to get the job done. With all that in mind, he readily accepted the job. His next prey had been decided. The very next day after getting all the necessary intel, Kim Woo Jin headed for the quarry. He heard that mining operations stopped due to monster activity. However, the gloom of an abandoned quarry was still a bit unnerving. This was not a place he would want to stay long. Wanting to finish the job as soon as possible, he headed for the massive mining tunnel, but was stopped before entering. Gathered outside the tunnel was a group of people claiming to have arrived first. They were just prepping for battle, so it would be cool if Jin waited for his turn. Right away, he was ticked off that a bunch of randoms wanted him to waste time and queue for a monster hunt. The leader of the group suggested they join forces so there would be no waiting game. They were clearly a mercenary troop. If these mercs were good enough to kill the Mad Skull, coming all the way here would have been for nothing. He doesn't really want to fight some people who are just trying to make a living. Even though there would have to be some loot sharing, it might be better to keep the peace and work together. Still, he knows not to trust these strangers too easily. Showing a little bit of teeth, he confronted the mercs about why they'd want to recruit someone they know nothing about. The red-haired leader chuckled and embarrassedly admitted that he was the type to prioritize safety over performance. He took one look at the lone hunter and knew that he was strong. He would be a huge boon to the team. Still speaking with a hint of hostility, Jin asked how Red gauged his strength. Red simply pointed to the side and answered that the wolf would not be following a weak master. The mutt was now licking the face of one of the mercs, a beautiful blonde woman. She claimed that even the Order Alliance had not been able to tame a prideful, independent wolf before. Jin specifically told Mutt to stay hidden, but here he was, licking some pretty lady's face. He's just like me for real. He quickly figured out why the mutt disobeyed. It was because of meat. This shameless creature dared to munch on the nice lady's meat when Jin had never tasted this world's meat cuisine yet. The mutt must have read his thoughts. After one big bite, he tossed the drool-covered piece of meat to his master. Everyone was stunned upon seeing such an absurd scene. Jin was pissed that his new pet was expecting him to take a bite out of tainted meat. Still, even though it was covered in wolf saliva and dirt, it sat perfectly on the ground, waiting to be consumed. Jin's body moved against his will and reached for the dirty meat. It had been a while since he had a real meaty dish. His mind protested, but his body was moving on desperate autopilot. Before his human dignity was tossed aside in front of a bunch of strangers, a kind hand stopped him from throwing away his humanity. The lady who originally gave Mutt the meat cheerfully handed him a fresh one, still sealed in cloth. Right then and there, the famished Kim Woo-jin started believing in gods. In this cruel world, he found a gorgeous goddess he could trust, the goddess of meat. After a quick lunch with the mercs, the whole group entered the mining tunnel illuminated by magic crystals. Jin was still savoring the remnants of his lunch. It was delicious, savory, and a tad spicy. It was incomparable to the monster meat he had to consume for survival. The goddess of meat turned to him and started some late introductions. Red's name was Jonathan, captain of the Black Marlin mercenary group. The goddess was Claire. Kim Woojin gave them his full name but cut himself off, just introducing himself as Jin for easier pronunciation. When the group reached a grand clearing in the middle of the mining area, Jonathan halted the march and quickly got to work. Everyone knew their jobs, and they worked efficiently. The trap team set up the nets, and the spear team moved to their assigned positions. As for Claire and the captain, they will be fulfilling a very important task. Jin watched as the air around the two turned light and full of life. Claire opened her grimoire and gave him his first glimpse of magic in action. The chronicles mentioned the use of magic in this world, but seeing it in person was an entirely different experience. Staking her own name, Claire drew an unknown power through some sort of prayer. With incantation and magic circles, she cast a feather step on the captain. Jonathan relished Claire's buffs with a grin. She was excellent as always. She warned the captain that he only had 3 minutes at best, and 5 at worst. He'll be on the most dangerous assignment, so everyone else had better stay ready. After some dynamic stretching, Captain Jonathan ran deeper into the mines to lure the Mad Skull out. Jin was impressed by how much the captain's speed was augmented. Magic sure was cool. He suddenly had an itch to learn how to use magic like Claire. While the captain was out, the chain of command and discipline stayed intact. It was a great operation. They knew that if even one person made a mistake, they could all die in the blink of an eye. The mercs were planning on driving the monster into a trap and pouring every bit of firepower into it. It was not a bad plan by any means. However, he was skeptical whether this would work specifically against a monster like Mad Skull. Just a few minutes later, the sound of the captain's footsteps could be heard getting closer. Jonathan signaled the trap team to load up as he smoothly drifted back to home base. The trap team pulled on their nets with all their might and effectively halted the Mad Skull's mad charge. Each rope was manned by multiple muscles to ensure the trap would hold firm. Once certain that the oversized boar was stuck in place, the mercs brought out their spears. They threw those things like harpoons, piercing through the monster's thick hide. The pain of multiple sharp objects piercing its skin made the boar roar with an unpleasant sound. It made the trap team falter a little, but they remained standing. Fueled by the pain and its natural aggression, the Mad Skull generated more sudden force than they were expecting. Jin watched in high alert as the entire trap team was lifted off their feet. When it came to raw strength, the beast easily outclassed the entire mercenary troop combined. After landing back on the ground, the trap team tried their hardest to regain footing. Weaknesses in a few key areas resulted in the beast breaking free from the restriction. It immediately aggroed into the team that dared to tie the beast down. Claire was directly in its line of sight. Worried, she hurriedly loaded up a magic spell to repel the monster. Jin wasn't going to let the woman with the most delicious meat get mauled by a reckless boar. Without a hint of fear, he faced the Mad Skull in isolation. The overwhelming force threatened to send him flying, but he gambled his aura by stopping the violent charge with his bare hands. Claire saw what he was doing and warned him against such a boneheaded approach. He did not listen, nor did he need to listen. He might be one of the few people in this world who knew how to properly take down a Mad Skull. Jin pushed the tusks to the side, creating some space. Using that gap, he reached for his blade. He sliced up, hoping to deal some heavy damage to the monster's chin. Unfortunately, even though he had gotten stronger, he did not have enough raw strength to end it in one hit. Naturally, the Mad Skull had more raw power than he did. It also recovered surprisingly fast. The deadly tusks refocused their target lock, and Jin had let his guard down. On the brink of getting brutally stabbed, he was bailed out by timely support. Claire buffed him with a feather step, making it possible to throw himself out of the boar's line of attack. Feeling the effects of magic for the first time, he was astounded. His body felt so much lighter. It was like dropping a 30-kilo pack from his shoulders. With this, he should be able to hunt the Mad Skull in the most efficient way possible. The rest of the Black Marlin mercenary group congregated in his position, offering their help, but Jin cautiously told them to back off. For now, dicing up this pig would be easier to do alone, with no one getting in the way. Based on experience, hunting a Mad Skull was surprisingly straightforward. Even with such a menacing name, it's ultimately just a big pig. Sure, it could run supremely fast in a straight line, but its lateral movement is horrible. While being led out of the tunnel, it repeatedly crashed into the walls on either side. Managing its aggro while moving side to side is the easiest way to stop that seemingly unstoppable charge. After letting the beast make a fool of itself multiple times, Jin continued taking advantage of his agility buff. In desperation, the Mad Skull tried to take a bite of him, but it was too slow. For the second step of the hunt, one must view those tusks, as long swords, as the monster's hands. Except that these murder weapons cannot be cut with a blade. The real juicy target was what's in the middle of those tusks, the monster's weak point, the nose. With a perfectly timed counter, Jin chopped that big-ass nose in half. He had already expected a crazy rampage after landing such an attack. but the pain of that wound should intensify with every movement. Eventually, it will become impossible to attack any further. Once the Mad Skull is exhausted and drained of blood, it's time to carve up the beast. Jin started the slaughter with the hind legs, slicing them apart to cut off mobility. Once the forelegs are out of the picture, that creature won't even be able to stand, let alone attack. After immobilizing and carving up his victim, a disturbing smile crept across his face. The mercs followed the fight, worried about the lone stranger. When they saw the aftermath of the Mad Skull's last-ditch effort to survive, they shuddered. Claire wanted to run up to Jin to make sure that he was all right, but the mutt stopped her from interfering. There was no need to worry or intervene. Jin is back with no Mad Skull in sight. Moreover, his mouth was suspiciously bloody. That guy could not resist eating some monster essence as a snack. The Mad Skull problem had been taken care of. All that's left was pork. Captain Jonathan had been working as a mercenary for a long time, and he had never heard of anyone taking down a Mad Skull solo. While everyone was celebrating, the mutt called everyone's attention as he growled upon smelling something. Another Mad Skull emerged from the mining shaft, and there were a few more behind. One of these bastards was hard enough to deal with. Multiples of them would be flat out impossible. Being an experienced merc, Jonathan collected himself, took up arms, and instructed his boys to prepare for battle. Before hostilities could erupt once more, Claire stopped the boneheaded boys. The Mad Skulls that emerged from the mining shaft were a concerned parent and 2 piglets. Those little crying chonkers were adorable. The parent was visibly upset but not acting aggressively. If anything, it was surrendering and retreating with the babies. They must have seen what that one human can do to their kind and decided that they wanted to keep living. A family of Mad Skulls must have taken over the quarry to raise their young in here. Now the captain feels kind of bad for breaking up a family, but he was also glad that they could wrap this up somewhat peacefully. By night, the mission was accomplished, and the victorious group had returned to 5th Pioneer City. The Black Marlins have gathered at the local pub to celebrate the massive dub without serious injuries. The time had come for the biggest highlight of the hunt. It's time to revel in the joy of labor. It's time for the bounty reveal. Everyone raised their glasses while Claire counted the money bags. The reward was supposed to be 70 gold coins, but there were way more than 70 on the table. Captain Jonathan bragged that he managed to squeeze the Order Alliance for more dough by making a fuss over inaccurate information provided. They were sent on a mission to deal with 1 Mad Skull, but there were 2 adults and even a couple of piglets in there. Using that surprise, he demanded a bigger reward. He negotiated a 70 gold bounty up to a whopping 110 gold coins. Jin asked how he pulled it off, since they technically killed only 1 beast. The captain proudly revealed that he just told the Alliance a little white lie. His men approved of this method. If you don't get caught, whatever you claim just becomes the truth. Jin certainly found some interesting people to team up with. Jonathan also announced that half of all the earnings will go to Jin. Getting half for doing all the work is crazy. The captain even admitted that his whole crew would have died a dog's death if Jin weren't there. Since the reward went up, there's enough cash for a pretty nice split for everyone. Although the trap was a bit of a failure, the buff was a huge help in successfully hunting such a fast and strong monster. Jin had no problem accepting the split just because of Claire's magic. In a celebratory mood, he even offered to pay for everyone's drinks the whole night through. Calling the Black Marlins heavy drinkers would be an understatement. Their captain himself drank liquor by the barrel. While the boys were being rowdy, Claire packed up her things and headed for the door. When Jin asked where she was going, Claire answered that she was going to get some magic practice done. Curious about the mystical world of magic, Jin obviously tagged along. Claire found a quiet spot just outside the city, took off her shoes, showed her feet, and meditated. The world's innate mana danced around her tired body, replenishing the juice she had used up earlier in the day. She might be exhausted from the hunt, but she still found the time to train. Jin was impressed. With Claire's help, perhaps learning magic was a possibility for him too. When he brought it up with Claire the next day, she was open to the idea of tutoring him in arcane arts. She was surprisingly agreeable. She wanted to give him something as a gift anyway, so this was the perfect opportunity. When the Mad Skull charged at her, Jin stepped up to the plate, unlike a certain useless captain. She made sure that Jonathan heard her complaints about failing to uphold one of the basics of combat, protecting the mage. The captain interjected, warning Jin that learning magic cannot be done overnight, and they would have to leave 5th Pioneer City in 2 days. Claire argued that Jin could just tag along. Still, Jonathan didn't see any reason why such a strong monster hunter would waste his time following some mediocre mercenaries. He understands that a brave wolf is usually most comfortable alone. Interfering with his journey would be rude. They got it twisted though. Jin doesn't really have anything planned for the future, but the captain was making him feel like he needed to save face for no reason. Playing along with the lone wolf persona, he asked where the Black Marlins were heading next. They have a big job lined up in the 4th Pioneer City, so the course is set. Awkwardly averting his gaze, Jin claimed that he was actually planning on going to the same place. This dude just wanted to learn magic. He was a terrible liar. Claire and Jonathan played him like a fiddle and made it seem like tagging along was his idea. He was hooked. They acted grateful for having such a reliable ally on deck, welcoming Jin warmly. Admittedly, Jin liked the feeling of being welcomed. The next destination has been decided. The journey to the fourth was quite monotonous. The Black Marlin caravan maintained a decent pace. With them was a Tarask, a monster that had undergone selective breeding as a means of transport. It's one of the few monsters tamed and bred by humanity. Jin had read about them in the chronicles. Due to this one's size, using it as a pack animal instead of a horse made sense. Throughout the long walk, Captain Jonathan did a good job maintaining morale. At night, Jin would join Claire in her meditation ritual, painstakingly trying to grasp at something new. There are dozens of reasons why learning something so foreign is hard. What he found the hardest was the requirement of repetitive effort. In any task, there are parts where growth is only possible through practice. Growing in that area tends to be sluggish. In some cases, like his very own, stagnation is possible. Repeating the same thing over and over again without anything to show for it was very painful. Still, he was used to this pain. Kim Woo-jin persevered. He did not repeatedly die, enduring 12 years of pain to survive the demonic realm. To give up now. One cold night, while meditating alone in the middle of the serene woods, he felt his first spark. Claire saw it happen from afar and merrily went up to him with her congratulations. It took Jin 10 whole days just to feel the faintest spark of mana. It was a difficult process to say the least. Claire admitted that he was on the slow side of progression, but progress was progress, no matter how slow. Some people with absolutely no talent go their entire lives without sensing mana. For the second stage of their lessons, she pulled out a vial of blue liquid from her pouch. She poured the shiny substance into a metal cup and put on her gloves. Preparations are done. It's time for Jin to get undressed. Not knowing what was about to happen and where her gloved-up hand would go, Jin's imagination ran wild. After getting rid of his clothes, Claire dipped 2 fingers into the sticky substance and got to work. She used that thing to draw an elaborate magic construct covering Jin's backside. This would make it possible to inject him with mana to make a path. Once the structure was solidly connected, she started the injection process. Claire manipulated the magic circle inside the construct to levitate above his skin. When she gently put her energy in, Jin was jolted into high alert. The feeling was on a totally different scale than the tiny wisp he felt from meditating. Deep inside his body, he started sensing something thicker than blood flowing through invisible channels. It was mana. Real mana? Once again, she congratulated him for taking his first big step into the world of magic. There are 3 basic stages of wielding magic. First is simply feeling mana, next is storing that mana inside one's body. At last comes utilizing magic in its infinite forms. Since Jin passed the first stage, they should be able to move to the second stage tonight. Claire will control the mana and send it towards his heart to give it a kick start. It would be best if he held his breath while grasping the sensation to create a proper vessel to store magic inside his body. Once her preparation was done, she shoved a hefty amount of mana into his channels, coalescing in his heart. Suddenly, Claire felt like an insect being preyed upon by a dangerous savage, a killing praying mantis. It consumes its prey with reckless abandon, letting its poor victim scream in agony. Once it had taken the life of its fellow creature through predation, the mantis turned. It looked deep into Claire's soul with its 100 eyes. She snapped back into reality, shaken to the core by the ominous energy. Claire tried to stop the mana infusion, but she couldn't. Her mana was being drained at a ridiculous degree. At this rate, she will be sucked into oblivion. Thankfully, the mutt was there to watch over the process. Sensing the danger, he wrapped his tail around Claire and yanked her away. If it wasn't for the red wolf, she would have been reduced to a dried-up husk back there. She owed the clever big fella for that clutch save. When Jin woke up from unconsciously sucking her dry, Claire collapsed onto her knees. He worriedly checked on her while she was distracted by what she saw. There was no mistaking it. That horrible scene came from Jin's mental world. Mental worlds manifest when a person's power and nature take a tangible shape. It depends on the life that the person has lived, varying from person to person. For such an ominous presence to exist in Jin's mental world, just what kind of life did this man lead? Worried and curious, Claire asked him a question that needed an honest answer. She asked if he had ever eaten an internal core before. Jin wasn't familiar with the term, so he didn't know how to answer. Claire explained that internal cores were the crystals found inside a monster's body. It was the thing he called the monster essence. Not seeing any problems, he admitted to eating them from time to time. Genuinely concerned about his physical and mental health, she asked how many cores he had eaten. Since he started using them as his main food source when he started hunting, and he's been killing non-stop for about 10 years now, he roughly estimated that he munched on maybe tens of thousands of them. He didn't see any problems with doing so. His stomach was never upset about his diet. You see, normally, humans who eat an internal core either die or turn into a monster themselves. By definition, karma is known as retribution. It is also the name of the turbid energy, abundant in the demonic realm. Living beings that absorb such a thing gain bizarre abilities and anomalies in their bodies. Upon accumulating enough karma, a nucleus can be formed, and a monster core is born. Over the next few days, Claire kept a close eye on Jin. One possibility kept bothering her. Out in the world, there are entities known to a few as dark priests. When the otherworldly gate opened and malicious karma engulfed the world, some humans followed the monsters and absorbed karma into their bodies. They hailed the beasts as angels. They ritualistically ate monster cores and sacrificed their fellow men. They were dangerous. Jin's confession reminded Claire of those mad men. Like the dark priests, he had eaten monster cores, tens of thousands of them no less. Still, if he were a dark priest, he would not have admitted to dabbling in such a taboo practice so easily, nor would he show his mental world to a stranger. Those oddities only made him even stranger. Even if he didn't know the danger of monster cores, it's a mystery why he would pick up such gross things, let alone eat them. In truth, Jin just saw other monsters eating monster cores and copied them. It wasn't that big of a mystery. Now that he wasn't hiding his unhealthy eating habits, Claire implored him to stop pushing his luck and stop snacking on karma-filled cores unless he wanted to die. Jin heard out her perspective, but he's a perfectly healthy living witness who opposes her idea. Clearly, her information wasn't as rock-solid as she believed, but if it was somewhat correct, his lack of guilt after killing people and his thirst for a good fight might be connected to his diet in some way. He appeased her by saying that he'd try, but Claire knew that this guy wouldn't stop. She warned her that he wasn't just risking his life, he was sabotaging his potential to use magic too. That gave him a real pause. The man prioritizes magic over his own life. Claire elaborated that in his current state, it will be difficult to use mana manifestation. Fortunately, he should still be able to use mana arts at the very least. Encountering an unfamiliar concept, Jin's curiosity was piqued. A few days later, the Black Marlin mercenary group reached 4th Pioneer City. Upon entering the plaza, they joined a packed crowd of armed people, all of whom looked like mercenaries. Given the scale of the quest, the number of participants wasn't too surprising. Furthermore, the whole operation was being overseen by a true blue Holy Knight. With a high and mighty scowl on his face, the crowd made way for Holy Knight Raymond and his men. Jin gave the white-haired big shot an evaluating glance. The man had an intense aura that cannot be compared to your run-of-the-mill mercenaries. One thing's for sure, he was no ordinary human. Aside from the leadership, the crowd of mercenaries was also drawn in by the contractor of the quest, the Golden Bug Wolf. Based on the name, Jin assumed that they were being deployed to kill an insect-type monster. Claire was surprised that he didn't know about the man known as Golden Bug. He was widely regarded as the greatest business mind within the demonic realm. He's a tycoon who owns so many assets, he would be considered one of the richest people in the world. Not long ago, Golden Bug died a suspiciously sudden death. Rumors were going around that he had been murdered, but nothing concrete had come out supporting that theory. If the Golden Bug is dead, then why have so many people gathered? You see, the Golden Bug left 2 sons, his heirs. They have now inherited the tycoon's legacy and wealth. Someone has to move that massive fortune to a much safer place inside a city barrier. Along with many other mercenary groups and lone wolves, the Black Marlins have answered the call to escort untold amounts of riches. No wonder such a crowd had gathered. They arrived just in time to be called forward. Captain Jonathan excitedly pushed Jin up to the front, eager to seize the moment. In front of the Holy Knight leading the mission, Jonathan proudly introduced Jin as his group's top dog. He even listed his boy's achievements of killing a mad skull and taming a werewolf. Rumors of his exploits have already spread among fellow hunters. They were calling him the Head Crusher. Of course, Jonathan was responsible for generating such a buzz without Jin's knowledge. A little notoriety is a good thing. Holy Knight Raymond gave him a once-over and granted the Black Marlin mercenary group a contract for 100 gold coins. They depart the next day. As soon as the sun rises, the shrewd captain was hyped. They secured 100 big ones just to move some payload with other mercs. Jonathan knows how to play the game. Half of the pay is for labor, the other half is for name value alone. Thanks to Jin's rapidly rising name value as the Head Crusher, they secured a pretty big payout rate. As the name suggests, people believe that Jin had a habit of crushing the heads of the monsters he faced. Whoever came up with such a thing had a terrible naming sense for sure. As long as they get paid the big bucks, Jin doesn't mind a little bit of fame coming his way. Besides, this mission will put him one step closer to learning mana arts. The night before the expedition, the mercenary group's quarters were alive and bustling with activity. When you put a bunch of meatheads under one roof, they quickly form a fight club for entertainment. Some mercs were itching to beat the shit out of someone, so they fought amongst themselves. Claire was standing in the corner to make sure that Jin knew what he was getting into. Wrapping his fist up, he was up for the next round of hand-to-hand brawl. She mentioned that Holy Knights are known for their proficiency in mana arts. Jin's plan tonight was to draw their attention and secure an opportunity to learn from experts. According to the chronicles, Holy Knights respect strength above all. If he could get that Raymond guy to acknowledge his prowess, he should receive proper treatment. Tonight, with everyone watching, that shouldn't be too hard to do. This is an arena where fighters risk their reputation and gamble with their aura. It was the perfect stage to get a big shot's attention. In his first fight, the opponent was eager to close the gap, a close combatant. Without as much as blinking, Jin dodged the telegraphed punch and countered by breaking the poor guy's jaw with a light tap. Playing it up for the people watching, he grabbed the opponent's disoriented head. Living up to his horrible nickname, he started bashing the man's skull with his forehead. The crowd loved every second of his performance. Headcrusher's name was truly warranted. This first bout should have drawn the Holy Knight's attention. However, Jin was not satisfied with just that. The real show is just about to start. To make the Holy Knight take him seriously, he plans to string more dubs until he cannot be ignored any longer. Jin went through multiple mercenaries, and he made a brutal show of it. They labeled him a head crusher, so he went on and crushed heads. After putting multiple fighters to rest, Holy Knight Raymond stood up from his chair and watched with full attention. There were more than a dozen limp bodies on the stage. The operations leader cannot remain silent any longer. If that Raymond guy was a real knight, he's probably itching to take a mercenary down a peg. As expected, the Holy Knight called up his boy Rex to snap the head crusher's win streak. The apprentice knight was upset that he was being ordered to fight a mere mercenary. Thus far, Jin's plan has progressed as he expected. The show is heating up. In response to the Holy Knight's call for a fight between an apprentice knight and a backwater mercenary, Jin refused. This is how he can negotiate and learn mana arts on his own terms. Claire and Captain Jonathan were stunned in silence. The crowd, who had been cheering for the head crusher, could not believe what they had just heard. As expected, Rex the apprentice was very much offended. If anything, he wanted to be the one to refuse the fight. Holy Knight Raymond asked if Jin was injured from his string of fights. Jin clarified that he was in tip-top shape. Raymond gave him an out, but he didn't take it. Now he was being asked to present a valid reason to refuse an honorable duel. Jin claimed that he was just a humble mercenary chasing after power and money. He can't just risk his well-being and fight a Holy Knight apprentice for free. Instead of a pointless duel, he wanted to put a bet on it. But for a bet to go through, both parties must have something of value to present. It's hard to imagine that a Holy Knight would want anything from a sellsword. Jin admitted that he wasn't a grand enough figure to boost anyone's reputation. He does have an ungodly amount of money from all the bounties he saved up, though. The crowd erupted in laughter upon hearing his crazy proposal. Suggesting gambling with a Holy Knight who lives and dies with honor was certainly a move. Insulted, Rex wanted to jump into that arena and beat the crap out of him. Raymond held him back and denied putting money on the line. Instead, he wanted Jin to waive all liability for any damages sustained during the fight if he lost. It was clear that Raymond wanted to hurt him bad, really bad. That works wonderfully for Jin. He won't have to put his hard-earned money at risk, and he could beat up some snob to his heart's content. He readily accepted and opted to hold on to his terms after the duel was over. Rex bandaged up his fists and entered the arena while giving the audacious merc a nasty look. They sized each other up, looking into each other's eyes. As expected, his fellow mercenaries cheered on for the head crusher. Some of them even wagered their entire fortunes on his win. Claire was worried and urged him to signal if it got a little too much, but there was no need for all that. He simply uttered, "Nah, I'd win." Rex was given the green light by his boss to go all out. Raymond recognized that the man hailed as the head crusher wouldn't be an easy opponent. Right from the get-go, Rex circulated mana all over his beefed-up body. Those who were in the know recognized the ignition of mana arts and lost all hope for Jin's victory. Rex took one strong step and closed the gap in an instant. Jin recognized the danger level of the speed. This red-haired brute was definitely on a different level compared to manaless small fries. Rex's explosive attack was refined and backed by powerful force. Too bad it only grazed Jin. Taking a clean hit from something that strong might just blow his head smooth off. Experiencing mana arts at such close distance, his interest towards the concept was growing. Rex caught him lacking and out of balance, forcing Jin to block a straight punch with both arms. The excess power sent him sliding backward. He was almost knocked out of the makeshift arena. Rex was feeling himself after that one. Despite Jin's rising renown in the demonic realm, all Rex could see in front of him was a wild beast who dared to look down on a Holy Knight's honor. The crowd's confidence in the Crusher was waning quickly. Even Captain Jonathan was worried that he might lose all the money he bet on his boy. Claire might be the only one concerned about his well-being while Raymond watched silently. Rex picked up the pace and rained punches relentlessly. Despite the momentum clearly on the side of his apprentice, Raymond could not shake a strange feeling. When Jin fought against other mercenaries, he didn't drag out the fight and took them down with savage brutality. For some reason, he was moving extremely passively against Rex, like a man with something up his sleeve. Rex didn't notice that. He thought he was just too hot to handle. He flexed his mana arts excessively, sending punches from a distance. Jin parried that shit without a problem, turning a portion of the mercenary quarters into collateral damage. These people had never seen a Holy Knight's mana arts get deflected bare-handed before. Jin had seen the opponent's arsenal. He's done measuring the apprentice's combat power. What comes after that? Checking his durability, of course. Catching Rex off guard with a quick change of pace, Jin delivered a nasty punch, knocking the air out of the clueless apprentice. It was a normal punch without a hint of mana used, yet the damage it delivered was immense. Raymond finally figured out that Jin wasn't playing safe or waiting for an opening. That man was just savoring the fight like a crackhead making his drug of choice last. Jin was pleased to see the apprentice endure the damage. Perhaps he could increase his resilience using mana arts too. This is no longer an honorable duel. Jin is about to conduct an inhumane experiment in front of everyone. How many hits can a mana arts practitioner endure? Let's find out. Before he could start pummeling the poor guy to oblivion, Holy Knight Raymond stopped the bout and surrendered on behalf of his apprentice. He promised to grant Jin his wish, as promised, so there was no need for further bloodshed. Jin was disappointed. He was just getting in the mood, but the Buzzkill Knight had to interfere. Still, the plan was a success, and the mercs in the crowd rejoiced at the victory of one of their own. While the quarters were buzzing with celebration and glee, Golden Bug Wolf's mansion was dreary and strange. Disgusting sounds of chewing and biting could be heard in the dead of the night. Golden Bug's first son, Derek, and second son, Cedric, have been fattening themselves up with all kinds of meat, wheat, decadent fruits, and alcohol. Cedric complained that 10 days to get their riches inside the wall was way too long. Derek blamed the inconvenience on the Order Alliance. He called the Order's operation all talk and no substance, despite all the money their family had dumped into that organization. Nevertheless, there was nothing they could do but gorge themselves with good food. They just have to pray that their rapidly changing bodies hold out until the 10-day mark. The next day came, the mission officially started, and so did Jin's mana arts lesson courtesy of Holy Knight Raymond. Its principle was simple, using mana like a body part to enhance one's physique or weapon. Anyone with a little bit of talent could theoretically use it. Still, there are levels to this shit. Some say mana arts are basic techniques capable of splitting mountains and seas. Raymond's Sacred Fire Slash is still far from that level, but he's a beast nonetheless. After demonstrating his proficiency and scaring every wildlife within the vicinity, he peacefully sheathed his sword. His apprentice was there to glaze him for an amazing display of skill. Rex was Raymond's biggest fan. He was practically bouncing on its crazy style, calling him the radiant and perfect hope of all holy knights. Raymond never had the patience for all that praise, and Rex knew when the boss wanted him out of the way. Watching from the sidelines, Rex's undying loyalty to the Holy Knight reminded Jin of a certain furry fella. The technique Raymond demonstrated cleanly sliced a massive tree. It definitely looked stronger and more polished than the clingy apprentice's attack. Even so, Jin wasn't too thrilled by its power. He thought it would be stronger and flashier. After the initial demonstration, Raymond instructed him to focus and give it a shot. He detailed how to flex the arm, pop the veins, and contract the muscles properly. Jin must visualize holding the mana within his muscles. Up to that point, it was very similar to what Claire had already taught him. Surprisingly, following the steps allowed him to tap into a surprisingly deep well of mana within his body. It was a calm and light flow. There was no mistaking it. This was the mana he drained from Claire. Once his will touched that source of power, a sudden change occurred. Raymond was focused on giving him a lecture on gradual consumption and body acclimation when he noticed the peculiar power emanating from his student. It was hard to believe that a common mercenary was able to manifest mana arts right after seeing it once. More importantly, this guy's mana was definitely an anomaly. It was thick and ominous, suffocating even. Mana arts take their color and form based on one's mental world. Such a nefarious power is a reflection of one's very essence. Even a holy knight like Raymond had never seen anything like it. Unbothered by his oddity, Jin gripped his blade, infused it with his dark mana, and showed off some of his moves with flawless execution. Perhaps his proficiency was still low. Every movement felt inefficient, given the effort required. It hardly seemed worth it. That could be fixed with practice. More importantly, he felt fucking cool. He cannot wait to try this flashy stuff in real combat soon. For this mission, multiple Tarasques were deployed to transport supplies and carry VIPs on their backs. Claire heard all about Jin's training sessions with Raymond and couldn't be happier with his progress. Jin brought up feeling her mana inside his body when he was practicing mana arts. Claire assured him that it was fine. He could just consider it as a gift. Jin was still disturbed by the sheer quantity of mana he siphoned from her, but thanks to that ample stolen supply, he picked up mana arts quickly. While he was having a conversation with his comrade, Rex butted in to talk some shit. The apprentice snidely reminded him to be grateful to Lord Raymond for taking time out of his day for some commoner. It was obvious that the Holy Knight Glazer was just salty about the embarrassing loss in the arena not too long ago. Jin wasn't offended. He was actually excited. He was getting bored and in desperate need of a distraction. If he can bruise Rex's ego again, perhaps the boy would pick a fight with him. Unfortunately, Raymond was there to get rid of the apprentice and stop any possible internal conflict. While they were advancing side by side, disrespectful curses resounded from one of the tents on top of the Tarasque. Leftovers and perfectly edible half-eaten dishes were tossed out of the window while the VIPs demanded more grub. Jin was curious what all the fuss was about, but Raymond didn't want him involved in this aspect of the mission. Their employers were just on their usual power-tripping episodes. Since the Golden Bug Wolf's death, Derek and Cedric have not stopped themselves from binge-eating at every hour of the day. If new orders are delayed even for a moment, they throw tantrums like spoiled brats. Raymond found it effective to just leave those guys alone. Ignoring them is the answer. Jin felt a bit sus about the apparent stress-induced binge eating. The more the expedition's food supply dwindled, the stronger his worry became. For some reason, he felt as though a terrifying monster was about to burst out somewhere nearby. When that sensation finally reached its peak, the giant tortoise carrying the airs started stomping wildly and freaking out. It groaned one final roar and collapsed onto the ground with a massive thud. Raymond started feeling that odd sensation too. He thought the sons of the late golden bug were in danger. He called Rex to stay close and drew his blade, letting his mana arts run wild. The safety of their clients is their top priority. Rex was assigned to calm the Tarrasque, even if it meant killing it. There was no need for that though. The tent resting on the tortoise was destroyed by massive dark spikes protruding from within. It was torn apart, stretched, and ripped. The culprit was a tentacled, grotesque creature with nothing but a mouth and bone-crushing teeth. Claire identified the creature as an abomination. You see, an abomination was the thing she warned Jin about, a human who turned into a monster due to the demonic realm's karma. Raymond took a deep breath and charged at the disturbingly ugly creature. He unleashed a much stronger sacred fire slash than his first demonstration. It was sharp, bright, and powerful enough to cut through layers of fat and flesh. The abomination that emerged from the golden bug tent was severed in half. Unfortunately, carving that ugly bastard in half wasn't going to cut it. Rex did not expect the attack to come his way. Fortunately, he was strong enough to cut through trouble. He separated what remained of the abomination into 3 equal parts. Despite the severe damage it sustained, the monster stayed alive. Raymond started to panic. An enemy that could regenerate its body was a terrifyingly complex one to go up against. It would be safe to say that young Rex had no prior experience fighting an opponent as unfair as this. He didn't keep his eyes on the threat. As a result, he was crushed into a fine mist of blood and gore, feasted upon by the grotesque monster. His sword-wielding hand was the only body part that remained intact. Everyone present was horrified by the sudden death of the Holy Knight apprentice. He was annoying, but he did not deserve to go out like that. Holy Knight Raymond was usually stoic, but seeing one of his most loyal subordinates get turned into lunch stoked the fire within him. Pouring mana into his blade, he tunnel-visioned at the ugly bastard churning Rex's body. The level of sacred fire slash he unleashed was higher than anything he had ever let loose before. It effectively dismembered the abomination, cutting it into little pieces. Raymond ran right into its maw, hoping to retrieve Rex from that slimy death trap. He believed that his boy could still be saved. The Holy Knight clawed and dug into the monster's throat, staining his pristine uniform. He was so focused on the task at hand that he did not notice the abomination rebuilding its body. Jin clicked his tongue. It looked like he would have to intervene now. The reformed tentacles attempted to restrict and trap the Holy Knight, but Jin cut through them and dragged Raymond out of harm's way. He was a bit too late. Raymond sustained minor injuries across the gaps in his armor. With the Holy Knight out of commission, some mercenaries abandoned all hope of survival. Seeing such an outlandish creature wriggle and regenerate, no matter the damage sustained, drained them of the will to fight. This was the first abomination Jin had ever encountered. He wondered if he was bound to become like this if he kept on eating monster cores. That will be a problem for later. For now, he needs to get rid of the immediate threat. At full speed, Jin was practically untouchable, no matter how deadly the tentacles were. With the abomination's seemingly immortal constitution, this will end up being a battle of attrition. Jin elected to keep on dealing damage while saving his stamina and looking for a weak spot. It was a lot to juggle, but he had the skill and finesse to pull it off. He knew when to defend and when to deflect close-range attacks. Still, the enemy could poke him from unpredictable angles, catching him off balance. Thankfully, the rest of the mercenaries, led by Captain Jonathan, made themselves useful. Although they can't put out the same level of firepower as the head crusher himself, they have the advantage of numbers. In addition, Claire was there to support their blades from behind. Their job was to pin down every severed part of the abomination to prevent regeneration. Claire's magic was surprisingly effective in making that happen. Stopping pieces from reattaching was a huge help. With this, the playing field was a bit more leveled. Jin was pleased to see the mercs pull their weight. Being barred from regenerating pissed off the nasty abomination. Its energy changed, and the melting flesh wriggled to reveal something horrifying from within. Faces of tortured souls. Those faces probably belonged to the gluttonous sons of Golden Bug. After changing forms, it formed more tentacles to retrieve the pinned down pieces. The ordinary mercs and their magically enhanced blades weren't able to put up a fight. Thankfully, Jin was there to interrupt the reintegration before the abomination could get back its full power. The horrifying face with bleeding eyes screeched at him angrily. It extended its tongue like a frog trying to catch a fly, but Jin was ready to deflect. He warned Jonathan and the rest to keep a distance, but the abomination got stronger somehow. The emergence of its true faces must have triggered some sort of evolution. Jin's plan was quite straightforward. Keep hacking away at it. If he can do it enough, the internal core will surely show itself. The captain assured him that the mercenaries hired for this job weren't frauds. They have been studying the monster's attack patterns. Jin welcomed their help and tapped into his freshly learned mana arts. He served as the main vanguard and main attacker, while the rest were relegated to a supporting role. With his blade enhanced by mana arts, his speed and power were significantly upgraded. He sliced and diced to his heart's content. Once he trimmed enough fat from the bloated bag of garbage, the other mercenaries joined in on the bloody festival of blades. As Jin expected, hack it enough times, and the internal core will show itself. As soon as he set his sights on that core, it was over. He sliced that thing in half, halting the abomination's rampage altogether. Everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. Holy Knight Raymond woke up just in time to watch the ending. What a useless leader, man. Everyone celebrated with pride. They knew that when word spread around that they took part in taking down a terrifying abomination, their reputation was bound to shoot up. While the mercs were feeling relieved and hyped, Jin had snuck away with the internal core in tow. Unbeknownst to everyone present, some sexy nun was secretly watching the whole fight unfold. She lamented that in the end, Derek and Cedric were no different from their useless father. That whole family was so utterly incompetent and useless to her cause. Nevertheless, the nun's interest had already shifted to the man who stifled her plan. She was curious about who he was and why he had taken the tainted internal core. After an action-packed day, the caravan camped out to spend the night in a clearing. While everyone was in the comfort of their tents, Jin preferred the outdoors. Out here, he could inspect the only loot he got from killing the abomination. After making sure that there was no one watching, he took a bite out of that internal core. Suddenly, his mind was transported to a memory that didn't belong to him. His psyche was transplanted in the body of some fat fuck tied to an altar, gagged and bound. He saw and heard a woman dressed in black talking about how incompetent the golden bug was. A few meters away, another man was in the same position. If they wanted to live on, the woman encouraged them to show her how special they were. She retrieved a small vial of unknown liquid and dripped it into the fat man's eye. Corruption swiftly spread throughout his body. The pain was mind-breaking. It was a disgusting process, to say the least. Thankfully, Jin snapped out of that fucked up memory. It felt way too real. His stomach turned and he threw up his guts. This thing very rarely happens, but eating an internal core can sometimes grant you the owner's fleeting memories. Come to think of it, these internal cores are full of side effects. The memory he just suffered through probably belonged to one of the golden bug's sons. Now he knew how they turned into that repulsive abomination. Jin learned from Claire that abominations originate from an overdose of karma. The liquid that the witchy woman used must be a concentrated form of turbid karma. There's a decent chance that he just witnessed a dark priest at work. While he was lost in thought, Claire came up to him. It's time to leave. Seeing the dude soaked in sweat and pale as a ghost, she suspected that this boy had eaten another internal core against her constant advice. He debated telling the others what he saw, but it might just cause misunderstandings. Keeping it a secret until he knew more would be safer. Without tipping Jin's sharp senses, the woman from that vision continued keeping a close eye on him. The witch watched his every action and tried to figure out what he was plotting. She was confused to see some random guy eating raw internal cores while working for the Order Alliance. She wondered if they would meet again. By that time, will they be allies or enemies? When the sun rose, Holy Knight Raymond held a funeral for those who fell during the attack. He offered his prayers to Ea, the god of harmony. Raymond paid his respects to his apprentice Rex, recognizing his bravery and dedication to peace. He could only hope that his passing would not be in vain. Jin dueled with the guy once, and even though they didn't have the best interactions, it was still a shame that he died so young. Raymond looked up and saw a red wolf aura farming on top of a cliff, obscured by the sun itself. He respectfully dropped to one knee and gave thanks to the regal beast. Jin asked Raymond what he was doing all of a sudden. By the Holy Knight Order's views, the red wolf is considered the closest companion of Ea, the god of harmony. The appearance of one at Rex's funeral must mean that Ea was offering them comfort and recognition. Jin bluntly explained that the dog was just his pet mutt. His words sounded blasphemous in the Holy Knight's ear. Calling a red wolf a mutt was an insult to Raymond's beliefs. To clear up the misunderstanding, Jin gave his pet a threatening look to stop acting out and come down. Mutt readily ran down the cliff and steadily stood before his master. As far as Raymond knew, red wolves were considered untamable. Jin casually dropped a little bit of his lore. He simply killed an alpha werewolf, and the annoying mutt had been following him ever since. In all his years traversing the demonic realm, Holy Knight Raymond had never met a dude more peculiar than Jin. He looked at Mutt and turned to its master for a small favor. If the red wolf doesn't have a proper name yet, it would be an honor if Jin named him after Rex. For one, red wolves are considered sacred in their order. Inappropriately calling him a mutt stings a little. Secondly, he wishes for Rex's will, which tirelessly fought against evil, to continue purifying the entire demonic realm. Even though Rex met an untimely end, that loyal apprentice did not let go of his sword until the very end. It would be an honor to carry on Rex's legacy through a sacred beast. Jin wasn't opposed to the idea. It's the least he could do for the poor guy. He turned to his pet and asked if it was okay. The mutt was receptive to it too, so there was no problem. Henceforth, Mutt shall be referred to as Rex. Now that the funeral had wrapped up, an old man pulled up and asked if he had come at a bad time. Raymond recognized the blind, old, and bald elder. From the geezer's aura alone, Jin could tell that this man must be one of the highest authorities in the area. This old bag of bones was the elder of the third pioneer city, Bo. Led by Holy Knight Raymond, the survivors of the failed mission paid their respects to the elder. The old man politely apologized for dropping by during such a time of grieving. He came here because an investigation was needed regarding the death of the Golden Bug's sons. Based on his tone, it sounded like he was implying that the deaths of Cedric and Derek were orchestrated by the mercenaries hired for the escort mission. Jin thought the suspicion was warranted. Their clients died during the transport of a massive fortune. It's only natural to suspect the people who constantly risk their lives for money. Raymond was ready to testify and provide evidence in support of his men. Elder Bo didn't see any problem with that. What he was more concerned about was how the heirs turned into abominations. Walking right next to Jin, the geezer commented that he could smell the stench of a dark priest all over this incident. If that wasn't direct enough, he referred to Jin by name and asked for his take on the incident. Jin did not take the implication kindly. He did not appreciate being suspected of being a dark priest. By the end of the day, the caravan was escorted into the third pioneer city. Jin and Raymond were escorted into the Vritra Arena, a training ground well equipped for a decent-sized army. Elder Bo was used to the fact that talented people show their talent from a young age. Jin, on the other hand, appeared out of nowhere not too long ago. He quickly piled up massive feats one after another. On top of that, he happened to get involved in the biggest incident in the pioneer cities in recent memory. On paper, it was only natural to be a little wary of the rising star. Jin acknowledged that he really comes off shady. Hell, he wasn't even from this world originally. Even so, the old man's request to spar was a little out of left field. Raymond also opposed this so-called spar. They just got out of battle not long ago after all. It would be best to give Jin some time to recuperate. Elder Bo pressured them to accept his terms by threatening them with criminal charges if they refused to cooperate. It was completely unreasonable. Jin felt slighted for being put in such a tough spot, all because of his abnormal strength. Moreover, he wasn't too enthused to beat up an old man. Elder Bo dropped his walking stick and seemingly read his mind, clearing up his worries. He appreciated the concern for his age, but there was really no need for consideration. After all, the reason he rose to the position of elder was purely due to the merit of his own strength. Jin was taken aback by the old man's sudden burst of speed. Using his own brand of mana arts, the Great Bell Strike, Elder Bo nearly caved his chest in. Jin flew across the arena until his momentum was broken by a nearby armory wall. Raymond forgot to warn Jin that these bald dudes, the monks of Vritra, are skilled martial artists with incredible combat strength. Naturally, the elder is the strongest among them. Old Man Bo was amused that the Holy Knight seemed eager to help the mercenary. He might just get jealous and accidentally lose control of his strength at this rate. Fortunately, Jin had been woken up by the first strike. He kept up with the follow-up, moving his head to avoid getting crushed. He tried to thwart the old man away, but his quickly drawn blade was caught with Bo's bare hands. Jin would have been in better shape if the old man hadn't hit the exact same spot that the abomination had injured. He scanned his body for further damage, but was surprised to find he was completely healed. Normally, his injuries from fighting the abomination should have left him bedridden for at least 2 weeks. Even the damage from Elder Bo's first attack was healing at an astonishing rate. There is a very real possibility that eating the internal core granted him the abomination's overpowered regeneration. If that's the case, then he just hit the goddamn jackpot. Revved up by this discovery, he started matching the elder's aggression. The old man no longer looked so frail. He was completely fired up. He would love to keep this spar going as long as possible, but he cannot act so childishly. Now that he has confirmed the rumors about the head crusher's strength, it's time to move on to the next phase of investigation. Using his mind's eye, he took a really close look at Jin's soul. Long ago, Elder Bo gave up 2 eyes to unlock his third. With this sacrifice, he gained the ability to pierce through the essence of the human soul. Using his gift, he could confirm whether Jin was truly a dark priest or something else, a rising new light perhaps. Elder Bo saw the same imagery that Claire was subjected to when she peered through Jin's internal world. Using the light of his third eye, Elder Bo vanquished the beasts on the surface level and unlocked what lies beneath. What he saw was an internal world beyond his wildest nightmares. Jin's soul can only be described as a cage populated by every kind of demonic realm residents. Doing this exercise in the middle of a spar might not have been the smartest move for the elder. Jin did not take advantage of the old man's stunned state. He didn't even know what was happening since he was unable to sense Bo's mana. The elder averted his soul gaze, but the feeling of dread stayed. Jin's mental world goes beyond unpleasant and straight into terrifying. It was a mystery how the young man's mind hadn't collapsed yet. He definitely wasn't a dark priest. This young man is a completely different beast. Elder Bo snapped back to reality and sincerely apologized for his rudeness. He had to invade Jin's privacy to rule out the possibility of dark priest infiltration. Once it was confirmed that he wasn't working for the other side, a young woman joined them in the arena. She introduced herself as Cindy, the youngest daughter of the Golden Bug. She wanted to entrust Jin with a quest related to the dark priests. After being introduced to Cindy, Jin joined her and Elder Bo on a trek to a forested area nearby. She filled him in on the recent rise of abomination incidents with the third pioneer city as the epicenter. In addition, many surrounding forests are being corrupted by demonic influences. After a few hours of walking and listening to incident reports, they've arrived at their destination. In front of Jin was an organic structure resembling a monster core, but much larger, attached to the forested ground and the surrounding trees. It was a rift core. Commonly found in the demonic realm, these things constantly pump miasmic karma into the air. A select few priests were deployed to counteract its effects. They prayed to cleanse the air without pause. At the same time, plague doctors rinsed the rift core's surface to dampen its effects. Only through this practice could they prevent the spread of decay. Purifying a rift core doesn't look like an easy task at all. Jin thought that the power of karma was supposed to weaken the further they got from the Northern Empire. For a rift core to appear near a human settlement must mean that someone was tampering with nature. A dark priest must be involved. If the number of abominations and rift cores continues to increase at the current rate, the third pioneer city humanity worked so hard to build will face an existential danger. In the worst-case scenario, the city will fall, and the settlers will be wiped out. Elder Bo and Cindy have been working together behind the scenes, and they have finally found some promising leads pointing to a suspected location of a dark priest base. With that said, they want to enlist Jin's help in the extermination operation in 2 weeks. Of course, he will be compensated at the highest level of pay. Receiving a request from such big shots must mean that he was finally being acknowledged for his merits. Since the operation won't start for another 2 weeks, Jin tagged along with the Black Marlins until their next stop. In the middle of the day, Claire was nagging him about all the crazy torture and punishments that confirmed dark priests were subjected to. It did not take the mercenary group too long to reach their final destination. They touched down the city behind the walls Yurgis. It was a massive place, on a scale incomparable to the small pioneer cities Jin had seen. Yurgis was also dubbed the safest place in the demonic realm. Perhaps he could settle down and live here someday. Now was not the time to think about peaceful living, though. While the caravan was on a short break before entering the walled city, Jin pulled Holy Knight Raymond aside to talk. After notifying Raymond about his upcoming mission, he told Captain Jonathan and the rest of the Black Marlins his plan to return to the third pioneer city for a quest. Cap knew how it goes in the mercenary business. Comrades go their separate ways after a job concludes. Still, it's always a bit sad when that day arrives. When asked about their future plans, Jonathan's next move was to simply drink and then drink some more. The same goes for the rest of the group. Claire might be the only one with a reasonable path forward. She intends to look for another job in the city. Even though the recent payouts were decent, she's still far short of the money needed to enroll in the Magic Tower. Jin was unfamiliar with the term. Claire deprecatingly explained that even though she calls herself a mage, she's just an amateur who gathered common knowledge. Her skills are barely past the beginner level. She would have no trouble making a living with just the magic she cobbled together, but she's greedy and ambitious. Claire wants to learn higher class magic. She risks her life day in and day out as a mercenary to save up money and attend the Magic Tower to make her dreams a reality. Claire was basically working to further her studies. Jin found that incredibly admirable. Since it sounds like she needs the money more than he does at the moment, Jin fished out his sack of gold coins and asked if this much would be enough to get her enrolled. Of course, Claire profusely rejected the free money. She couldn't possibly be that shameless. Jin insisted that this wasn't charity. He just wanted to pay her back for everything she'd done for him. Before she could refuse again, Jin dumped his heavy sack on her hands. He was certain that they would see each other again. Maybe she'll be a high-class mage by then. Claire nearly teared up. She had never received this level of kindness from anyone. From the bottom of her heart, she thanked him and vowed to repay the favor someday. With that taken care of, Jin bade his temporary mercenary family goodbye. He wasn't with them for long, but the bond formed was real. They were good people in an otherwise cruel world. Holy Knight Raymond already had a chat with Jin earlier. He watched the peculiar mercenary walk into the sunset from afar. Rex the Red Wolf gave him one final knowing look before joining Jin. 2 weeks later, Jin officially joined the mission to exterminate the suspected Dark Priest. Elder Bo and Cindy stayed in the city but deployed their best men. Although she recruited Jin for the job, she was a little bit of a skeptic when it came to the mercenary. She was one of the few people privy to the fact that Jin had eaten a monster core before. Still, Elder Bo fought to have Jin included in the operation. He already verified that the young man had no ties to dark priests. Despite his assurance, Cindy firmly believed that consuming monster cores leads to the loss of one's sense of self. It was basic common sense. Even her brothers fell victim to that fact. The only reason the geezer was protecting Jin must be because of his hope that another person close to him still has some shred of humanity left. Elder Bo wasn't happy that Cindy was bringing up old wounds. He doesn't want to have that conversation with her at all. She apologized for the disrespect, but left the old man with a warning. Cindy agreed to keep Jin's secret for now. But if that man's sanity slipped, she promised to frame him as a dark priest and bring down the full force of her authority. Of course, the punishment will extend to the man who brought him into this operation in the first place. She could threaten Elder Bo all she wants. He is confident that Jin will pull through. That kid had already consumed untold amounts of monster cores, became unimaginably strong, and miraculously kept his mental world stable. Jin is living proof that humanity can be maintained despite the effects of monster cores, but the world is not yet ready to accept that possibility. Even so, Elder Bo firmly believes that the young man's power will bring great hope to this world, ushering in a new era. The first expeditionary force marched with dignity and discipline. They sang their little songs and touched spear tips on beat. It was a pretty spectacular display of synchronization. Their marching hymn was disrupted by the sound of solid rock breaking someone's skull. The special mercenary the higher-ups hired was literally bashing his head with a rock. After wounding himself and cracking his own forehead, Jin counted up while freely bleeding from his rock hole. When his count reached the 600th second, his flesh writhed and stitched itself back together. He thought the uneventful march was a great opportunity to test out his new regeneration ability. To heal a shallow head wound, it takes about 10 minutes. The fracture he got from the abomination was a bit more serious, and it completely healed in 2 days. He won't test it now, but a severed arm would probably regenerate within a month or something. This is precisely why he cannot kick the habit of eating monster cores. Sometimes you just win the ability lottery. Jin was itching to use this thing in actual combat right away. Word about his experiments reached the man in charge of the mission. They've all heard of his head crusher nickname, but none of them thought it meant a habit of crushing his own head. Jin apologized for the graphic experimentation, but Expeditionary Force Supreme Commander Roland from the Order of Harmony doesn't seem to mind. On the contrary, he was fascinated by geniuses like Jin. He believes that geniuses are supposed to be fucked up in the head. Since Jin was a mercenary handpicked by Elder Bo, he must be one. Changing the subject, Jin asked the commander about their game plan. Roland admired his genius impatience to get down to business. Roland detailed their strategy to head north of the third pioneer city. They will clear out every rift core on the way, while closing in on the center. The exact duration of the operation is uncertain, but the goal is to complete it within 10 days. Jin argued that the area to cover wasn't too big, and 10 days might be a bit too long. Roland agreed that normally, that would be a long-ass time, but they're about to find out why the timeline had been stretched. Because of the rift cores, monster territories have expanded. In fact, they just entered one of them. A ground-dwelling little monster with sharp teeth tried to get the jump on Commander Roland, but was sliced in half before it could get close. The residents of the deeper demonic realm are invading human territory. They've grown audacious enough to pop out in the sun without fear. For the next 10 days, there will be non-stop bloodshed between humans and monsters. The beast that attacked the commander was just a warning shot. Soon, the whole expeditionary force was cornered by an underground ambush from all sides. The monsters screeched and attacked from below. The initial assault resulted in gnarly injuries to those who were unprepared. Jin got a good look at the beasts and identified them as leech rats. The leech rats he knew weren't able to dig underground, though. Supreme Commander Roland immediately demonstrated why he was assigned to lead this mission. He was unshakable, and his shot calling was clear. He kept an eye on everyone's position and warned Jin when he was targeted by multiple leech rats at once. Instead of fighting back, the supposed genius just stood in place and let dozens of rodents cover him with bites and scratches. They clung to him and tore through his flesh in every way possible. Commander Roland tried to back him up, but the numbers were too overwhelming. Once he was completely covered and obscured by leech rats, Jin executed his plan. Using a dagger and his teeth, he reversed the situation and bit into rat flesh like a rabid dog. The rat leeches thought they were surrounding him. All this time he was surrounding them. Jin hatched this insane plan just because he wanted to inherit some new abilities. The ability to dig underground doesn't sound too flashy, but he might as well fish for it. Instead of dangerous beasts, all he could see was a small hill of monster cores waiting to be devoured. Every bite was perfectly aimed at maximizing the number of cores he could take in. The chance of inheritance triggering is very low. Gaining a monster's skill wasn't always a guarantee, far from it. But this was the real secret to his survival in the demonic realm for 12 years. He died a lot, but that's beside the point. In just a few moments, he stuffed his face with about 40 rat leech cores, and he started to feel full. Unfortunately, his inheritance hit rate was abysmal today. Before he could gain the digging ability, a random soldier drove away the leech rats covering up his insane activity. Jin tried to tell the soldier to stay back and maintain formation. He can't secretly binge on rats with an audience. Unfortunately, these nosy soldiers didn't know how to mind their own business and yanked him out of the rat pile. His rescue was only possible because the Holy Choir had started their performance. Led by their violinist, Commander Roland himself, the Holy Choir buffed up the entire expedition force. Every perfect note sounded heavenly, and its effects were drastic. Every soldier felt like they were overflowing with power. Slaughtering the rats was a breeze. Jin also experienced the choir's effect. His stamina was restored, and his defense significantly increased. These holy songs were like crack in the form of sound. More importantly, he assumed Roland was a swordsman. Who would have thought that the commander was a support type? While he was performing a beautiful overture, the expedition force launched a potent counterattack. The rat massacre lasted until nightfall. Once the expedition force set up camp, the daily performance of everyone who participated was recorded. Each individual's results will reflect in their share of rewards. That night, curious conversations about Jin spread throughout camp. The guy smashed his head with a rock and charged right into a monster pile on his own volition. Now, some of the soldiers saw him digging in the dirt inside one of the tents. Jin was disappointed to find that he really missed out on the digging ability, despite the quantity of cores he devoured. Commander Roland saw him bent over in the dirt and asked if he was doing all right. Jin apologized for startling everyone earlier, but Roland didn't mind his weird behavior. He was focused on Jin's impressive results. When the young man jumped right into the horde, many thought he was dead for sure, but he proved himself with tangible results in the end. According to the official tally, Jin hunted 267 leech rats all by himself. The average soldier only took down 4 or 5. Even the holy knights included in the army capped out at around the 100 mark. Jin's numbers cemented his reputation as a true genius in the commander's eyes. Jin wasn't too pleased with his numbers though. If he had solely focused on hunting instead of secretly snacking, his kill count would have ballooned by a few hundred more. While Roland was in his tent, he asked if the commander was truly part of the support force. Roland assumed that he was about to get bullied for being a supporter. Jin wasn't going to do that though. He was just mistaken in thinking that Roland was the flashy fighter type. His expectations were very much subverted. Commander Roland admitted that in his heart, he's the kind of man who desires to wield his sword on the battlefield. But the main reason he joined the Order Alliance was to fight for peace. Countless people have lost their homes and loved ones because of the demonic realm's expansion. In a cruel world like this, he chose to play a role that would be most helpful to the most people. As a swordsman, he's only slightly better than average, but his musical skills are considered top tier. Jin was surprised to hear Roland's motivations. He thought the man would be an annoying dude obsessed with geniuses. In truth, he was just a decent person who was doing his best to benefit humanity. Jin's respect for the commander rose sharply after their conversation. 7 days have passed. The 10-day deadline is fast approaching for the quest. The expedition force had made significant progress, advancing deeper into the north, while destroying numerous rift cores along the way. They've faced all kinds of monsters, kobolds and rabbit beasts, you name it, they've killed it. The deeper they infiltrated the expanding demonic realm, the stronger the encounters became. Miraculously, the soldiers' morale was even higher than when they first began marching. Out in the front lines, one man was carrying the workload of an entire army by himself. He slashed through monsters effortlessly. No matter what kind or what size, Jin cut down every monster that dared to stand in the way. He wasn't slaughtering these beasts out of the goodness of his heart. He was, of course, aiming for their juicy monster cores. Unfortunately, he had been extremely unlucky. Over the past week, every core he bit into was a dud. Commander Roland received reports of Jin's exploits on the front lines and was flabbergasted. He could not help but laugh that an entire army was getting outdone by a single mercenary. The Order Alliance's pride must be bruised by now. One of the Holy Knights asserted that this wasn't a laughing matter. Their soldiers have become far too lax, while Jin has been amassing an ungodly number of performance points. Roland chose to view this as a positive thing. Thanks to Jin's reliability, they barely have any casualties so close to the 10-day mark. Their destination is just right around the corner. It would be best to get some rest while they still can. Deep in the demonic realm, a nightmare blunt rotation gathered for a very important meeting. The Dark Priest Summit is in session. A masked man was displeased by the progress the Order Alliance had made over the past few days. Well, they practically led the humans to their base by planting so many rift cores around. The witch nun who turned the Golden Bug siblings into an abomination insisted that their chosen youngest sibling had already placed countermeasures for this exact scenario. Surely he won't disappoint the rest of the group and prove himself competent. The one she called the youngest firmly believes that defenders always have the advantage over attackers. Those pesky humans reacted slightly earlier than expected, but nothing in his great plan of darkness had changed. On the following day, Commander Roland was presented with a venomous dilemma. In front of them was a dead end, a massive chasm decorated by an intricate weave of extra-durable spider webs. Lurking below the darkness were giant spiders the size of a small car. According to the priest, the demonic realm's corrupted energy is concentrated in the massive hole before them. In his many years of service, Commander Roland had never heard of such a place existing. It was quite bewildering to behold a giant chasm inhabited by monsters lurking in the dark. Sensing their presence, the critters made their move. Jin approached the commander with a tinge of doubt. It seemed a bit strange that evil forces would choose a chasm to hide. Normally, it would be more advantageous to fight from high ground. Roland assumed the depth was for the sake of avoiding exposure, but a tunnel would have worked far better for that. In Jin's opinion, this whole operation smells like a trap. Before they could explore that idea, everyone's attention turned to their flank. Something big had breached their lines. They were tossing and beating soldiers up left and right. They were besieged by a bunch of wild Bigfoots. In this world, Bigfoot is an enormous monster that grows 4 to 7 meters tall, boasting immense strength. The biggest Bigfoot leading the charge was draped with a venomous snake monster around his neck, a salmosa. The level of disruption this sadistic white-haired Bigfoot could deliver was immense. At one point, it literally lifted a section of the ground, knocking every soldier off their feet. It was a deliberate effort to toss the pesky humans down the chasm. As soon as the poor souls landed on the sticky web, it was as good as over, GG. They tried to break free of the web's sticky hold to no avail. Mere moments later, the architects of the web structures showed up. Hungry spiders sensed some prey stuck in a trap. Now it's time to feast. Commander Roland made the swift call to prioritize taking down the Bigfoots to prevent any more of his men from falling into the murder hole. He and his holy choir set up buffs and all kinds of support magic to strengthen the team. While everyone was freaking out and fighting for their lives, the real demon watched with a grin on his face. Instinctively seeing him as the biggest threat in the entire army, the Bigfoot chieftain violently gravitated towards Kim Woo-jin. He dodged the first attack coming his way, letting Bigfoot's uppercut go wide. Commander Roland and the soldiers looked at Jin's predicament in horror. The largest of the pack wasn't only the strongest, it was using that troublesome snake as a weapon too. Eventually, Bigfoot succeeded in bringing the fight into the hole. It would be a shame if Jin died from fall damage. Thankfully, he was able to save himself by using his blade to stick to the walls. After that, finding a safe foothold was surprisingly easy. Jin looked around, and the Bigfoot chief was effortlessly using the webs like it was a fun obstacle course. It has the strength to one-shot people and the mobility to utilize the precarious terrain to its advantage. Willingly facing a Bigfoot in close combat would be insanity. To make matters worse, that ape somehow learned to use his snake's venom for long-range harassment like it's a gun. The more abilities the Bigfoot demonstrated, the bigger Jin's smile grew. All he could see were coveted abilities that he could steal by consuming their delicious monster cores. Right then and there, he lost his footing and fell, only to be caught by one of the many winding webs. Before Bigfoot could catch up again, he cut himself free from the sticky situation and dove deeper below. The beast showed how agile it can be, yet Jin was toying with it without a proper foothold. Normally, when two monsters join forces to fight, their strength doesn't just add up, it multiplies. But in Jin's eyes, those kinds of monsters share a common weakness. Just as it's tricky for the opponent to face two monsters at once, it's equally difficult for monsters to treat two separate bodies as one. He's got the Bigfoot chief right where he wanted that brute to be. When exposed to danger, a wild monster will eventually rely on pure instinct. That's when they become terribly predictable. Bigfoot tried to crush him with another missed fist, opening an opportunity to counter. Instead of going after the big bad ape, Jin beheaded the Salmosa snake first. The venom launcher didn't know what hit it. Seeing his comrade's head separated from its body, Bigfoot groaned in distress. It was pretty much over at that point. Jin just demonstrated how to effectively hunt two synergistic monsters at once. With its overall combat prowess diminished, the Bigfoot was slain handily, its head cut off to match the snake's bloody end. The Bigfoot chief's body made an explosive thud as it fell to the bottom of the chasm. After beating the Sekiro boss, Jin Aura farmed for a second even though no one was watching. Overall, it was a pretty decent fight for a gatekeeper. Suddenly, the snake's essence mysteriously wafted to his position. The peculiar essence was clearly emanating from the monster's exposed core. It was a strange feeling, but not odd enough to stress over. For Jin, the hunt always ends with the prey's monster core in his hand. Without hesitation, he munched on that snake ball like he did countless times before. Surprisingly, ingesting the whole core in just a few bites led to him bleeding from his orifices. Once that reaction subsided, he was granted one of Salmosa's abilities. Was the peculiar essence he felt connected to distinguishing which cores offer inheritance. He has devoured so many of them that it won't be strange to get all sorts of crazy abilities. The snake's inheritance alone would be a fine addition to his arsenal. Jin was very excited to take a look at what kind of ability he had gained, but he might have to test whatever it is in a real fight, real soon. A raging ball of fire lit up the bottom of the chasm as it traveled from one of the many caverns below. Jin saw the ball of flame heading straight for his ass and reacted accordingly. The one who cast the spell reveled at the sight of the beautiful explosion. The youngest member of the Dark Priests has shown himself. Assuming that Jin was vaporized by the blast, he laughed at Jin for acting so relaxed in enemy territory. His laugh quickly halted when he heard someone clicking his tongue in frustration. From the flames, a man emerged unharmed. His clothes were burned off, but his unnaturally durable, scaly skin remained untouched. Jin was rather upset about getting this new defensive ability instead of a venom launcher. He was more bothered by it than the flame that tried to burn him to a crisp. Once he finally paid attention to his surroundings, he noticed the loser responsible for burning his clothes. He quickly got over not getting the ability he wanted. The tough skin already saved his ass after all. It seems pretty useful. It is certainly an ability worth further investigation, but he would prefer not to test the armor against a direct hit again. Jin picked up his sword and physically cut through another flaming mass of mana. This time, he set his sights on the loser trying to ruin his day. The fight isn't over yet. Witch Hat Crackhead couldn't believe that some random topless bum blocked his attack twice. He's heard about Jin before. The Dark Priests labeled him a crazy bastard who hangs around humans while openly gorging on monster cores. To match Jin's freak, he tapped into the power that made Dark Priests so powerful. He is going all out by unleashing the spider legs attached to his spine, Spider-Man style. Instead of spamming fireballs all day, he took on Jin in close combat. On paper, it was an unfair fight. It was one dude with a sword versus a man with 8 extra limbs made for killing. After the first exchange that forced Jin to back away, he re-evaluated his opponent. This was his first time encountering another person using a monster's inheritance freely. If this man were the same as him, then he might have gotten those deadly attachments by consuming a spider monster's core. Witch Hat has been waiting to face Jin since he heard about him. He's so thankful he could cry. Apparently, his abilities extended to controlling the spider monster population residing in the accursed hole. This certainly complicates things for Jin. The critters maintained a safe distance from their target, letting their long-range attack do the work. Some spiders can spit fire and some can spit poison gas. Combined, the fire and poison concoction was an attack he could not simply ignore. The firepower was intense, and its effects would be harshly lethal for any other fighter. Unable to contain the barrage any longer, Jin was consumed by the stink fire. The explosion it produced reached all the way up to the surface, alerting Commander Roland. Despite tanking a finishing move with nowhere to run, Jin survived through grit and excellent defense. Witch Hat Crackhead was fascinated by the fact that he survived. He's never met a human who could withstand his perfectly orchestrated direct hit before. At this point, it would be a stretch to call Jin human. His Salmosa armor was cracked in many places, but the flesh below only suffered minor burns. Admittedly, he was caught off guard by how potent the combination of poison gas and fire was. As expected, Dark Priests aren't to be underestimated. After softening him up with stink and heat, Witch Hat threw himself at Jin. Using his sharp spider legs as retractable weapons, he engaged the barely recovered enemy. Based on the crazed smile on his face, it looked like he was having the time of his life. He's been itching to test out his close combat prowess against someone who could pose a real challenge. The spider's legs gave him an unfair advantage over a single sword. It was becoming increasingly apparent that Jin needed to change strategy. He can't keep blocking and parrying. Using mana arts, Jin enhanced his blade. With that extra injection of power, he was able to parry a spider leg attack and briefly stun his opponent. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to capitalize on the stun since this fight was never a one-on-one to begin with. Just when he was starting to turn things around, the fire and poison gas attacks restarted. Once more, Jin was forced to endure being grilled with some poisonous seasonings. Frustrated, he thought of dealing with the annoying spiders first. But that won't be easy with a Dark Priest constantly on his ass. Currently, his internal organs have sustained severe damage from the fire. His regeneration and stone skin abilities kept him standing, but they are reaching their limit. And this time, Witch Hat didn't wait for him to emerge from the fire. He got in there to press the attack. Gradually reaching his limit, Jin thought of a batshit crazy plan to get out of this hell. Witch Hat flexed his spider legs and used them to riddle Jin's back with holes. The pain and damage were so debilitating that he lost grip of his blade. Feeling his spider legs digging into flesh, Witch Hat rejoiced. He laughed like a maniac while holding Jin in place and gradually making the gnarly wounds bigger and bloodier. He's never met such an intriguing enemy before. Now he understands why the other Dark Priests wanted to leave the guy alone. Despite his precarious position, Jin fought extremely well. He blocked unstoppable attacks and even used mana arts. He's definitely too valuable a talent to kill. It would be a waste to let him bleed out. So the Dark Priest graciously released his agonizing grip on Jin. Instead of fighting each other to the death, Witch Hat wanted to offer him a very special offer. All Jin has to do is join the Dark Priests, and his life will be spared. Hearing that while slowly bleeding to death made him scoff. Witch Hat insists his offer wasn't too bad. At the end of the day, he believes that people who inherited skills are special. Those ordinary humans with nothing special going for them are the ones trying to forbid the power of inheritance. They will try to kill anyone they suspect of being a Dark Priest. Witch Hat assured Jin that there will come a time when he won't be treated any differently than someone on the dark side. Up to this point, he's just lucky to be hanging out with the relatively chill Order Alliance. When the wrong people learn of his ability to use monster cores, they will no longer see him as human. So, Witch Hat is extending a hand to a fellow freak. Take it, and he can join forces with the same people in the same situation. Not only that, but he's also guaranteed to grow stronger and obtain greater power. Jin just silently listened to the freak yapping and recruitment attempt. He cursed under his breath. If there's one thing he hates, it would be clowns who love talking too much. His pure hatred for yappers awakened a demon eager to teach Spider Freak a lesson. If possible, Jin didn't really want to use one of his hidden cards. But given his current situation, he was left with no choice but to do so. His eyes turned crimson, kicking off a transformation. Malnourished Spider-Man felt something shift in the air as if some dreadful boss music just started playing. Jin remained seated, but but the ominous aura emanating from his body made him unapproachable. Gradually, Spider Freak felt a real threat to his life encroaching. Jin shed his scaly stone skin for better armor. An unknown material spread across his entire body while the sinister aura intensified. Facing the dark priest who pushed him to get serious, Jin had one scathing question to ask. How could a wolf ever serve a dog? Spider Freak was tweaking. Who would have thought that the guy who's been eating monster cores religiously was hiding his power the whole time? In a panic, he turned to his children, the spiders, to turn Jin into ashes. Jin responded by bringing down the Hammer of God, Heavenly Punishment. Black streaks of concentrated mana crowded Spider Freak. While he was busy saving himself, the spiders posted up on the walls were systematically slaughtered one by one. The final black streak, stronger than the previous ones, crushed the Dark Priest by sheer force. He's now realizing how vast the power gap between them truly is. He doesn't even want to imagine what kind of monster core one must eat to get this kind of destructive power. It was as though fate itself was dancing in the palm of his hand. Spider Freak struggled and fought to break free from the crushing pressure. He succeeded after spending everything in his tank to liberate himself. Now, every cell in his body was screaming at him to get the fuck out, run and never turn back. Jin seemingly read his mind and, in the blink of an eye, disappeared and reappeared behind his prey. Spider Freak wanted so badly to run away, but Jin grabbed hold of his spider legs from the back. As if he were cracking a perfectly cooked crab dinner, Jin tore Spider Freak's legs one by one. With inhuman force, he made that loser feel every bit of pain with every single pull. The severed spider legs bled as the Dark Priest kneeled in defeat. His adrenaline kicked in, giving him just enough energy to try one more escape attempt. The arrogant loser trying to recruit Jin was gone. In his place was a pathetic bug who would say anything to be spared. He asserted that bros who eat monster cores should stick together in this cruel world. They could build something far more mutually beneficial if given the chance. But there's only one kind of help he could offer Jin. He could start bargaining for his life in exchange for information on other Dark Priests. Spider Freak snapped at him for being a hypocrite. They use the same power, yet he's working and siding with the humans who would abandon him the first chance they get. Jin didn't want to talk about his philosophy. He just wanted answers to his very simple request. Seeing that this incomprehensible entity would actually kill him if he didn't cooperate, Spider Freak showed willingness to snitch on his team. But it was too late. Jin deemed him far too much of a hassle to deal with. He already gave the loser one chance to save his ass, but he didn't take it in time. As a result, Jin overloaded his very being with vicious mana. Spider Freak's last words before he was deleted were a pathetic curse directed at his killer. Heavenly Punishment lived up to its name. Jin erased that bug from existence without leaving a body. With the threat neutralized, he gradually deactivated the mysterious monster form. Before he could shed the gray scales completely, blood oozed out of his holes. He casually wiped the bloody leak from his nose, mouth, eyes, and ears. When the accumulated damage from the battle caught up to him, Jin's body shut down. He collapsed at the bottom of the chasm. The exhaustion was unreal. He lost a lot of blood. This is precisely why he wanted to avoid using that particular form if possible. He only used it for a moment, yet the toll it took on his body was debilitating. His eyelids were fried. He knew that once they closed, waking up would be an uncertainty. Thankfully, Commander Roland and some of his most trusted men reached the bottom of the chasm just in time for a rescue. Jin thanked his lucky stars for their timely arrival. It looks like everything worked out in the end. Roland ordered his men to bring a stretcher so they could carry Jin up for the medical attention he needed. The commander looked around the aftermath of the battle, and he couldn't even picture in his head what had happened in this dark corner. Once the mission was wrapped up, everybody involved returned to Third Pioneer City. The professionals tried their best to stabilize Jin, and now he's in recovery. When he finally opened his eyes, he was no longer in that dank spider lair. He sat up, feeling intense soreness throughout his entire body. He was just surprised he had survived that encounter with the Dark Priest. While he was collecting his thoughts, a maid entered the room, assuming he was still unconscious. She hurriedly ran away to inform everyone that the mercenary had woken up. The first one to hurry over was none other than Commander Roland. According to the commanding bard, Jin has been out of commission for 3 whole days. That's an awfully long recovery time, considering his new regeneration ability was facilitating his healing process. Roland explained that his men had taken care of most of the surrounding rift cores after Jin eliminated the biggest threat. The casualties were minimal, and the expedition was a success, all thanks to Jin. Jin liked the feeling of being acknowledged. But of course, extraordinary contributions deserve an extra generous award. Before they could discuss what kind of juicy compensation he's entitled to, another man entered the recovery room. He was wearing a priest's uniform, glasses that hid his eyes, and spoke with a firm dignity. Behind him were stoic guards. Mr. Glasses represents the Order Alliance, and he would like to take Jin's testimony regarding the expedition. The Alliance wanted to know what kind of opponent he faced and how he fought them. in as much detail as possible. When asked why, Glasses insisted that this inquisition is merely for the sake of record-keeping. Given how chaotic the battlefield was, the Alliance cannot simply assume that what happened was a fight between a human and a monster. Mr. Glasses wasn't even hiding his real intent. Jin is under suspicion. He was hoping for a happy ending, but that's just wishful thinking. For this one, Jin thought of a plausible lie to absolve himself from more troublesome business. Thankfully, Elder Bo arrived just in time to handle the Order Alliance himself. At first, the representative refused to budge. He wanted to get answers straight from Jin's mouth. As a result, Elder Bo leaked some of his intimidating aura and ordered them to get the fuck out. Glasses tripped over his words before retreating with his tail tucked between his legs. After driving out the extras, Jin and Elder Bo were the only ones left in the room. Jin thanked the old man for bailing him out. Ever since they first met, Elder Bo had always been very interested in Jin. Sensing a little bit of apprehension, the blind monk assured Jin that no matter what form he takes, he will have Elder Bo's trust. Jin wanted to play dumb until the geezer pulled out a monster core from his pocket. It wasn't just some random core either. It came directly from the body of the dark priest he killed. It was troublesome, but Elder Bo was able to secretly slip it away. He had a feeling its rightful owner might want it when he woke up. Before giving him the monster core, Unk gave his boy a fresh haircut and hooked him up with fresh gear, gloves included. After giving Jin a cut and dressing him up, the blind monk was very satisfied with his work. Jin immediately noted the fit of his new armor. It was beyond comfortable. The fabric felt like it was one with his body. If he had known this type of armor was out in the world, he would have gotten his shit tailored from the start. Elder Bo told him that comfort isn't the only thing that makes the set satisfying. The true value of this armor goes beyond comfort. Out of nowhere, the old man concentrated mana on his palm and charged at Jin with a full form strike. The palm touched his armor-covered abdomen, making him step back instinctively. He couldn't believe that this weird old man would dare to punch someone who had just woken up from a 3-day coma. But then he noticed the lack of pain in his stomach. He barely felt a tickle from that charged attack. All force was dissipated because what he's wearing is a relic. Relics are treasures imbued with magic. They are expensive and rare. The weight suggests that the material must be some ordinary beast hide, but it's truly a mysterious item with powerful defense comparable to a full heavy plate armor. Relics like this one are so rare that it would be hard to obtain one even if you have the gold coins to pay for it. The armor was just one part of his rewards. Presented by Cindy, Jin was awarded a total of 2,400 gold coins. They brought in a chest glimmering with gold bars and ingots, skyrocketing Jin's net worth. He's never seen so much money in his entire life. Elder Bo made him understand that through the countless monsters he hunted, the expedition succeeded. His contributions to the people are far from ordinary, and they entitle him to equivalent rewards. Of course, Cindy added a little extra straight out of her pocket. Jin doesn't mind getting filthy rich off one job. Even so, he wasn't used to being treated so well. In life, he came to learn that excessive kindness can be suspicious. Even though these two know about his habit of consuming monster cores, they continue to support him. Elder Bo laughed. Even when he treats the kid well, he still gets grief in return. 3 days after the expedition, the entire chasm was cordoned off, and guards were assigned to monitor the area around the clock. The night shift guards were feeling lazy and sleepy on the job. Not a good look at all. While they were arguing over whether something was moving in the bushes, it happened. A long metal chain wrapped around the guard's neck. It tightened and squeezed hard, suffocating the patrolman. He was yanked away with enough force to detach the head from the neck. An ambush ensued. A laughing maniac who loves the smell of blood under the moonlight cackled. The other patrolman tried to act tough and confront the intruder, but stumbled over his words, petrified. This time, the lunatic used the steel ball at the end of his chain to crush the poor patrolman's skull. With the watchdogs out of the way, the rest of his coven showed up. The dark priests have returned to their compromised hideout. Included in the group was the witch nun. She was lamenting the defeat of one of their own by such incompetent fools. Their youngest, Enoch, was supposed to win, but it turned out that he's complete trash. Witch nun won't waste tears on weaklings. The lunatic who cleared out the guards estimated that they were stronger than low-level knights at least. The masked priest couldn't give less of a damn about Enoch. He somewhat expected that spider bastard to lose anyway. Despite the setback, they're still within the plan's range. Tonight, they returned to their former hideout to get the agenda moving. With a touch of his hand, the masked priest triggered some sort of formation from an inconspicuous cliff face. Ancient runes appeared before them, winding and twisting. Once the formation was complete, it revealed an esoteric symbol, incomprehensible and divine. The cliff face slowly opened, exposing a hidden entrance hiding in plain sight. Tonight's meeting will kickstart the plan to eradicate every filthy human in existence. Behind the hidden entrance, horrors beyond human comprehension reside. An endless supply of human test subjects was strapped to stone altars, ready to be used as guinea pigs. Back in 3rd Pioneer City, Elder Bo was still hanging out with Jin at midnight. Cindy was there too, just sipping on her tea. Elder Bo knows he's in no position to reprimand Jin. All he can do is ask for a favor instead. He pleaded with Jin to use his formidable power for the sake of humanity at all costs. Jin thought that if anyone found out about his secret eating habits, he would be hunted and tortured. But he was wrong. Elder Bo was different. The geezer sees his power to help humanity instead of the opposite. Jin was worried then, but he can only be thankful now. For now, only the people in the room know about Jin's monster core diet. Cindy thought it best to keep it that way, since others would not react the same way she and the blind monk did. As for how exactly he can use his power to help, Elder Bo responded by putting the Dark Priest monster core on the table. From what he knows, consuming a monster core can unlock the memories of its owner. Of course, the probability of that happening is very low. But if a monster core belonged to someone who was originally human, the probability increases drastically. That's precisely why Jin was able to peek into the memories of the Golden Bug's sons. Basically, Elder Bo wants him to consume the core and find any relevant information about the Dark Priests and their little cabal. With everyone in agreement, they proceeded. Jin grabbed the monster core and felt the weight behind it. Not only did he find people he can talk to comfortably, but he also gets a chance to eat a monster core he thought he missed out on. Partly for the greater good and partly for his own sake, Jin opened his mouth wide. The first bite is always juicy. Blood, bile, and many other bodily fluids explode in his mouth. Instantly, he was transported to Spider Freak's old memories. He was a wretched man who so desperately wanted to be chosen instead of living the shitty life of a failure. He begged the witch for true, overwhelming power at any cost. To prove his resolve, the witch tempted him to drink from her totally normal vial. Jin was yanked back to reality after that short vision. When he opened his eyes, Elder Bo and Cindy were waiting for him to come back. Thanks to the fragmented memories he sifted through, he learned the Dark Priest's next plan.